This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with James O'Brien.
3 minutes after 10 is the time. A very good morning indeed to you. It's Thursday, so mystery hour on the way at 12, all being well, which will bring some very welcome and some may say much needed light relief from the horrible diet of news upon which we have been, which we've been visiting every day now since that sort of repetitive descriptions. I think it's important to introduce other descriptions sometimes. So you could say the worst incident of anti-Semitic mass murder since the Holocaust. Puts things in perspective somewhat, doesn't it? While there are so many attempts at distracting us in place, and although the death toll was epic and it was the largest incident of anti-Semitic mass murder since the Holocaust, the death toll for Palestinians is now considerably higher and rising, which is why since the very beginning of this, I've made it quite clear that I'm not going to recalibrate my compassion according to where a child or a civilian was born or under what star they may have come into this world. 5 minutes after 10 is the time. We are taking a slightly less, I don't think it's less serious, but we're looking at British politics, or rather at the British Prime Minister today, and you are allowed to question. I was about to say you're allowed to make fun of him, but even in the context of such grisly times, I don't know that even sounds right. The Private Eye magazine cover that I read out to you yesterday, Private Eye, of course, a satirical magazine. I woke up this morning to see that apparently there's been an outcry against it. I couldn't really find anyone outcrying against it, but the difficulty of plotting that safe course couldn't really be clearer, could it? And anybody essentially stepping out of line runs the risk of getting absolutely attacked from all sides. BBC front page, the Daily Mail's front page today is actually a masterpiece. You've got to give credit where it's due. The level of cognitive dissonance or hypocrisy or complete contempt for readers that is required to put together the two key items on the Daily Mail's front page took even my breath away. As a keen student of the cancerous bile that the Daily Mail pumps into the nation's bloodstream every day, even I did a double take at this. So the top half of the front page of the Daily Mail today: King Charles's plea to the nation: don't let the acrimony and rancour of social media debate corrode our national life. Oh, God bless you, King Charles. Absolutely. I mean, don't let the acrimony and rancour of social media debate corrode our national life. Literally below that, on the same front page of the same newspaper, Israeli president blasts atrocious BBC over Hamas. So the Daily Mail taking this opportunity to launch acrimony and rancour in the direction of our national broadcaster. And literally, either nobody involved in the editorial process of putting that front page together could see what is blindingly obvious to you and to me and to anybody sentient with a functioning moral compass, and could see that it is an almost unimaginable level of hypocrisy. Or they can see it and they laugh because they hate their readers so much that they go, yeah, we can do that. They won't care. They'll love it. They'll lap it up, boss. We sold them Brexit. We sold them Boris Johnson. We told them Liz Truss was a genius and that Kwasi Kwarteng's budget was a work of staggering beauty. So, of course, they're not going to... Our readers aren't going to notice that we're literally praising the king for calling to an end to acrimony and rancour while retaining our position as the nation's chief purveyors of acrimony and rancour. I might not say the word rancour again, just in case. I haven't done my vocal warm-ups yet this morning, and you never know whether your lips get a little lazy. 7 after 10 is the time. So I mentioned all of that just to highlight the strange times we are in when you reflect upon how much energy and effort is put into attacking people for not saying things and attacking people for saying things. If you think the Daily Mail thing is slightly surreal, Gary Lineker has been attacked by people who don't think he should ever offer up political opinions in public for not offering up a political opinion in public, or even not necessarily even a political opinion, just an opinion. You could get your head around that. He was trending the other day with lots of people saying, "Why haven't you condemned Hamas?" And you're sort of like, well, Why? I mean, I got one that same morning that said something like, "Are you going to go in as hard on Hamas as you do on Brexit?" And I read it twice, thinking it might be a joke. It might be a joke. It'd be quite a good joke, wouldn't it? Because it would be taking the mickey out of the kind of people that are attacking Gary Lineker for not expressing an opinion within, a fortnight of attacking him for expressing an opinion. But it wasn't a joke, because you can look at the account from which it has come, and it wasn't a joke. Why are you going to attack Hamas as much as you attack Brexit? I go, well, I'm not really sure you're doing a great service to the people murdered by Hamas by trying to turn it into the kind of political football that Brexit became. But hey-ho, on we go. And into this curious context steps Rishi Sunak. The Prime Minister of the United Kingdom arrives in Israel today, while the Foreign Secretary, James Cleverly, goes to Qatar. Now, I am quite a patriotic person in the proper, pure sense of the word. I recognise that I'd probably be patriotic if I'd been born somewhere else in the world, but I wasn't. I was born here, and I really like things like, I don't know, Shakespeare and football and beer. So, and I do think that in some ways we are quite a pioneering nation. Oddly, given that I spend a lot of my time berating how much more progress we could make, in many ways we're a good place to live if you are not part of the ethnic majority or not part of a religious majority, if there is such a thing. We're a pretty diverse and inclusive nation. I'm actually very proud of that. I'm not going to get all dewy-eyed, but I often think of the 2012 opening ceremony to the Olympics when I'm trying to make this point, although, of course, there were inevitably people on the right of British politics complaining even then about the attempt to portray diversity and decency. So I'm quite patriotic, but it doesn't extend to thinking that you're not allowed to take the mickey out of our politicians, whoever they are and wherever they come from, even in very serious times. So I did have a moment this morning where I thought, and I've met James Cleverly, of which more in a moment, and I know I curse every Tory that I ever say any vaguely warm words about. And I think anyone that facilitated or cheerleaded, if that's a word, cheerled for Boris Johnson has no place in public discourse. It's the same in America. You can see what the Trump allies are doing now with regard to a new Speaker of the House. There's two Republican parties, the one that's loyal to Trump and the one that isn't. And they are so miles apart from each other that it barely merits describing them with the same word. And I think there's probably similar problems in the Tory party, except now that Johnson's gone, a sort of semblance of surface decency has at least returned. But Cleverly's a fairly rubbish politician. Nice bloke, rubbish politician, right? He's in Qatar as some sort of envoy of peace, sort of strutting the international stage as if he really matters. And I don't think he does. Why do I say that? Well, partly because I sat next to him on the one-show sofa once. And I just don't think that I'd ever have found myself sitting next to, I was going to say Henry Kissinger, but of course, I mean, his CV is pretty hideous, actually, in many ways. But you know what I mean? The Pope. Who are you going to send? The President of the United States, the Secretary of State. I sat on the one-show sofa next to him. And now he's in Qatar, meeting world leaders. But why? I don't know. I can't imagine. And it's not so much him that we're talking about. It is Rishi Sunak going to Israel. So we spent, was it an hour and a half yesterday, give or take? Maybe slightly more, wondering what success would look like for Joe Biden. And I think we got our answer. I think some concessions on humanitarian corridors, but also, as the front page of the Times displays in very stark terms today, support for the coming ground invasion. So I don't know that he was there to, as some of you suggested, bring about some form of ceasefire. He was there to mitigate the impacts of the attacks, and he would probably... I think I would probably argue that he has succeeded, but that's why I asked you two questions yesterday. What do you want him to achieve, and what does he want to achieve? I don't think he was going there to try to persuade Israel not to go into Gaza with all guns firing. I think he was there to hopefully negotiate or encourage the opening up of some form of humanitarian corridor, and I think he has done that. However, I can't for the life of me imagine that Rishi Sunak is going to achieve anything meaningful. Now, I would quite like to be wrong. That's why I mentioned patriotism. I'd love to have some evidence that the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom straddles the world stage like a colossus of diplomacy and international importance. And that might be the first time in history anyone's used the word colossus in the same breath as Rishi Sunak. I would quite like that. In a way, I'd quite like that. It would, of course, depend upon what they did with their status as a colossus of international diplomacy. But what I learnt from you yesterday was the impossibility, really, of steering Benjamin Netanyahu from whatever course of action it is that he's decided upon for whatever reason. And I don't understand why Rishi Sunak's gone to Israel. I mentioned James cleverly in the context of the trivialisation of UK politics. Rishi Sunak, it's barely a fortnight since he was launching a bogus war on motorists and talking absolute gibberish about 7 recycling bins. It's barely a fortnight since he was ranting about a non-existent war on motorists and claiming that he was going to abolish a meat tax that no one's ever paid. Barely a fortnight since that conference speech was a sort of a farrago of nonsense and made up fights. We're gonna end the war on them. What war on them? What? So I guess what I'm suggesting to you is that Rishi Sunak is a ridiculous figure now. But because he followed Boris Johnson and Liz Truss, he is the least ridiculous of the last 3 prime ministers. But in normal times, if he had followed immediately after even David Cameron and Theresa May, we'd be hanging our heads in shame at the idea of him representing us on the world stage. It's taken me a while to get here, I confess. In fact, I'm not sure I got here until this morning. But to go in the space of a fortnight from allowing your Home Secretary to claim that multiculturalism has failed, allowing another senior, your Transport Secretary, to tell complete conspiracy theory-flavoured lies about so-called 15-minute cities, to tell lies about recycling bins and meat taxes, and to claim to shut down the biggest infrastructure project that this country has seen since the war, and to claim that you were somehow waging a war against the people who were waging a war on the motorists, and then 2 weeks later to think you can go to Israel and help. We might as well have sent Mr. Blobby. But I would love to be wrong. I'd love to be persuaded that actually the meat tax man, Rishi Seven Bins, can actually arrive in one of the most blighted corners of the universe and bring something helpful or substantive. Rishi Sunak, Rishi Seven Bins Sunak. The peace envoy the Middle East needs. 0345 6060973. Alex in Brighton points out Biden's achievement is 25, possibly 50 lorries carrying aid for 2.2 million people. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. So why at 10:16 do you think Rishi Sunak has gone to Israel? 0345 6060973. And I would like some answers that flirt with the idea of substantive contribution. That's a great phrase, isn't it? A substantive contribution. But you'd have to tell me what that looks like. And you can be as cynical as you please, all right? Why is Seven Bin Sunak, just mere days after launching a war against people who aren't waging a war against motorists, why is he in the middle of an actual war zone? 034 or adjacent to an actual war zone. 0345 6060973 is the number that you need. The time is 10:17 and the question is both serious and, as I hope I've conveyed to you, perhaps a little bit silly as well. Because it's daft, right? Now I've described it to you in those terms. I suspect you're either chuckling wryly, like I am, or you're very, very cross with me because I've held up a mirror again. And you don't like what you see in it. 18 after 10 is the time. 0345 6060973 is the number you need.
James O'Brien on LBC. James O'Brien on LBC.
21 minutes after 10. So I think perhaps the way to zone in on that rather round the houses introduction is to ask you to tell me what success would look like in the context of Rishi Sunak's visit to Israel. So what would as he boards the plane home, Rishi Sunak would say, "It's a jolly good job I came because I have," and then you fill in that gap for me. All right, it's a jolly good job I came because I have changed this, changed that, or changed the other. And of course, underpinning that is the central question of why is he there? 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. Nick's in Twycross. Nick, what would you like to say?
I'm jolly glad I went to Israel in the middle of a war because I got a positive Daily Mail front page. Is probably the best I can offer you. Political desperation for a poll bounce.
It won't just be the Daily Mail. I'm watching him now sitting with Israel's president, not Netanyahu, Herzog, and it's international statesman optics, isn't it?
Boris went to Ukraine and walked around Kiev within a couple of days of the Ukraine war starting, and I think it won him some kudos, even though I saw through it.
Well, hang on, mate. You've done something that no one's ever managed to do on this programme before.
Go on.
You've put me in a position where I now have to actually defend Boris Johnson's record.
Oh, don't do it, James.
I've got to do it, Nick.
Okay.
We were in the very front row of support for Kyiv. It was more. I mean, Johnson's motivations might have been, as they have always been at any other point in his life, entirely self-serving and cynical. But from Kyiv's point of view, from Ukraine's point of view, we went gangbusters. So.
But you see, I have to question whether this is just more of the same. There's a by-election on today.
No, which we're not going to talk about in any way, shape, or form. So stop that now, or you'll get me into trouble. Just briefly on the Johnson parallel, we were at the forefront of sending support, supplying military aid, and of course providing corridors for refugees. I'm fairly confident Sunak won't be doing any of those things today.
But at the same time, when everything is about vanity and optics with this current government, because they have nothing left in the locker, why would he not expect that this might win him even a scintilla of support amongst a number of disaffected people? Is it worth?
The answer to what does success look like? You just mean a PR uptick or a slight bounce in the polls?
Exactly. I think that's all I've got. I don't
might be all weird.
There's anything else to it.
No, well, perhaps if you had Israeli family, maybe you'd feel that it was an emotionally resonant journey, but it wouldn't actually change anything. That's why the question stands on what would support look like? What would success look like? I beg your pardon. Thank you, Nick, you cynical old soul. 25. God, that's probably, hopefully, be the last time I ever have to kind of stick up for Boris Johnson in any way, shape or form. Don't worry. There's an entire chapter about him in the new book where I return to my customarily corrosive form. 24 after 10 is the time. Damien's in Reading. Damien, what would you like to say?
Hi, James.
Hello.
Very nice to speak to you.
Likewise.
I'd like to totally concur with Nick. He sort of stole my thunder there.
Yeah, we might be moving into consensus territory on this one.
Yeah, I'm afraid so. Rishi Sunak is not a bad person, so he wants peace just as much as we all do. But I think, like Nick said, ultimately his sort of main priority is I might be able to, sway a couple of points in the polls if I play this correctly. Yeah. So that you might have what a cat's hope in hell next year at the election. The French president is expected to visit in the coming days, so maybe a show of solidarity is more important than we appreciate. But of course, if you were a British Palestinian and you felt that your prime minister was making a big show of solidarity with an administration that is about to launch a ground offensive in Gaza, you might feel a little bit dismayed or betrayed even. Yeah, or possibly. To be honest, I don't think many people are really going to pay attention or even realise that he has gone out there, unfortunately.
Well, this is where you worry me, Damien. You make me worry for my future because I think that the media is absolutely all over it, and yet your ordinary geezer or geezeress in the street is probably not very heavily invested.
Because the world is fully aware that he's a joke prime minister, I'm afraid. At least Boris had some air of, he was a much better liar, Boris. Rishi,
is not. He just.
No.
It's a joke. It's pointless. It's like sending the head boy into a raging bar brawl. It's like, what do you expect him to do?
That's it. There's the question. What do you expect him to do? We can run with that because that insulates us slightly from repetition of the. It's just a photo opportunity. 0345 60 60973. What do you expect him to do? Because potentially, on the domestic stage, it could be quite inflammatory. I know he is supposed to be meeting other people later and talking about humanitarian aid, but he says himself, above all, I'm here to express my solidarity with the Israeli people, which you can do from anywhere. He meets Mr. Herzog now, the president, the prime minister later. He'll then go on to visit other regional capitals. And given that Joe Biden was there yesterday and achieved little, quite what Sunak could achieve in meaningful terms. So what you've got here is almost a dichotomy. I suspect everyone's going to agree that this has got nothing to do with changing policy, but some people quite like the fact that these optics are there. It does say something to... I would say the Jewish community in the UK, but of course, conflating the word Jew with Israeli is problematical for reasons that we've discussed an awful lot. But you understand what I mean when I say that. And if you were part of that community, especially if you had family, if you do have family in Israel, I imagine you quite like this, but you also know inside that it's meaningless. So there's the people who think it's meaningless and pointless, and the people who think it's meaningless. What's the opposite of pointless? It's the one with Bradley Walsh, isn't it, on ITV? Ian's in Liverpool. Ian, what would you like to say?
Hello, James.
Hello,
good to talk to you. Looking forward to meeting you in Manchester.
Bring it on.
So I think this is entirely a self-serving visit. I mean, he kind of has to go because he's the Prime Minister and Biden's been, so he has to show face. But I think it's more self-serving than that. You were talking on your show a couple of weeks ago about how Keir Starmer has become more statesman-like than Rishi Sunak as he prepares for government next year. And I think this is, or Rishi sees this as his opportunity to regain that sort of helm of statesmanship, to give him, as your last callers have said, to give him that bump in the polls. But it's entirely how people at home see him as the statesman rather than what he can actually achieve while he's over there.
Seven bins.
Exactly, yeah.
Those around Mr. Sunak have said his visit will focus on physically showing solidarity with Israel, pressing for humanitarian aid to reach people in Gaza, and emphasising face-to-face the need for Israel's approach to a ground invasion to be measured and calm, a measured and calm ground invasion, which doesn't sound dissimilar to what Joe Biden was trying to do yesterday. So there is a subtext here that renders it a bit silly, the expression of solidarity aside, because he thinks he can reach parts that Joe Biden failed to reach, or at least that's what they're pretending.
Exactly, that's what they're pretending. I don't think he thinks he's going to achieve anything over there. I think his main objective is what it's going to achieve for him over here.
Aye, and that juxtaposition of expressing full solidarity with Israel while trying to get humanitarian aid into Gaza. If I was in Gaza, I would quite like to see someone expressing solidarity with me as well, I think, and with Israel at the same time, not making it look a little bit either or. Thank you, Ian. I'll see you. What date is the Manchester gig? Can you remember?
29th, I think it is, November.
I'll see you on the 29th.
I'll see you on 29th. Looking forward to it.
Likewise. Half price sold out, unfortunately, so unless you want to kind of mug Ian for his ticket, you won't be able to join us.
James O'Brien on LBC. James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 10:34. Kate in Surrey says, I'd go further than your callers this morning regarding the performative statesman stuff. It's not even about the next general election. It's about his post-election career. Ditto Cruella, which I presume refers to Suella Braverman. It's all about the performative flags and pictures. It worked for Truss. Interesting. So the expression of solidarity is clearly important to many, not to everyone, I don't imagine. But in terms of substantive success, what is Rishi Sunak doing in Israel? Malcolm is also there. Let's begin by asking Malcolm, what are you doing in Israel?
James, yesterday I was watching my beloved West Ham, and today it looks like I'm going to be watching Kidderminster.
Fantastic.
We've gone from Premiership to Sunday football over Hackney Marshes.
It's not Sunday football. So for people who don't, first of all, get back in your box, pal, all right? Second of all, Malcolm is speaking to me live from Tel Aviv. And third of all, I will explain your analogy. You are suggesting that where Joe Biden is an international statesman of immense stature, Rishi Sunak is non-league.
Exactly. On the other note, I think you're right, it's pointless. Maybe the other word you're looking for in his vocabulary is achievable. Maybe he thinks where Biden failed by the meetings with all the other, the meeting that should have been yesterday.
That got called off.
It got called off. The mere fact that he's hopefully going off to these other countries is going to show him as this great, politician, this great, a person who can achieve such things. But really and truthfully, he's just Kidderminster.
Can you pick something else, like Accrington Stanley or something like that? Can you leave the Ross Penn's Red Army out of your lazy analogies, please? That's just outrageous. It's an outrageous slip. But presumably, I think I mentioned that you're in Tel Aviv. We spoke earlier this week. Understandably, my rule about not having people on twice in the same week is relaxed at times like this, particularly for people in places where you are. But presumably, around you in Tel Aviv, there are plenty of people, particularly perhaps British Israelis, who are very pleased about this trip, this visit.
Well, but they're pleased as far as he's showing support.
Yes.
And yes, you're right. He hasn't. Why doesn't he show support to the Palestinians, and to the people in the UK who are of Palestinian background? So, all right, he can't physically go into Gaza where he can go here, but I'm sure, at some point he's got to say, we support Israel. However, we also support the people in Gaza, the everyday Palestinians. Forget Hamas, they're out of the equation.
Yes, of course. Which is a position that people seem a little bit shy of articulating.
Yeah, he just wants to. He's trying to tick all his boxes, and saying that I've also come. Biden's been, Germany's been, and whoever else is going to follow me. I've got to show that I'm here as well.
Your cynicism notwithstanding, I don't want anybody to think that we're downplaying the importance of the show of solidarity to many other people in Israel and many Jewish people back in Britain as well. But that's all it is, a show of solidarity. It doesn't change anything or move any needles or achieve anything substantive.
What's he going to achieve? Maybe he'll get an extra truck through the border? I doubt it.
Well, that's what we're measuring. That's what we shall have to find out about. I wonder if Malcolm will pull off the first ever hat-trick in this programme's history and manage to get onto tomorrow's show. Malcolm, you take care, mate. Look after yourself. 10:38 is the time. Pete in Accrington's very upset. Leave Stanley out of your filthy mouth, he says. All right, Pete, you can't really pick a team that's synonymous with the sort of minnow status in UK football, which is what Malcolm was doing. And I nearly teased him then for making a joke that I had to explain, because, of course, if you have to explain a joke, it hasn't worked. But I now find myself having to explain a joke I made a moment ago because you've been bombarding me with evidence that you didn't understand it at all. When I said, what's the opposite of pointless? And then I said it's the one on the other side with Bradley Walsh. I meant that they're usually on at more or less the same time. So the opposite of pointless is the chase, right? So it wasn't a great joke, but it wasn't me not knowing who presents Pointless and thinking it was. I literally just walked past Alexander Armstrong on my way into this studio. I wave at him every morning in the Classic FM studio. So I know that it was I've been on it. I've been on Pointless. I know exactly what the flipping. So that was the joke. What's the opposite of pointless? The word, because I don't think there's a word pointful. But for comic reasons, I pretended. Oh, never mind. Just stop sending me messages telling me that it's called The Chase and Bradley Walsh presents it, not Pointless. I don't know why I bother. Karen is in Stanmore. Karen, what would you like to say?
Hi.
Hello, Karen.
I just wanted to say that I nearly didn't ring you because I've never rung you before.
Oh.
And I don't feel really fully equipped to argue any kind of politics.
Let's not have an
I'm
argument then.
Nearly,
Let's not
nearly
argue.
as well equipped as you.
Oh,
but
well,
I just wanted
I'm sure
to say,
I'm sure that's not true for the record,
No,
but I will respect your desire not to have an argument.
I wanted to say that as a non-religious Jew in the UK, I'm very, very proud to be British.
Yes.
I don't think this is I don't think the point is that what we think of Rishi Sunak as a Prime Minister or as a leader of this country. He is the Prime Minister, and as someone who leads a very important country in the world, I think it's the solidarity that he's showing both to the Palestinians and to Israel that's important. He's not going to... I mean, what do we think anyone is going to achieve by travelling from another country?
Well, I think Joe Biden could bring to bear some fairly hefty leverage if he wanted to. I mean, I'm not sure that he did want to, but I'm not... and also, I love this country as well, but I don't know if we are very important on the world stage at the moment, Karen, really.
Well, he is the Prime Minister.
He is the Prime Minister. We can definitely agree. We can definitely agree on that. Let's take baby steps on all the things we can agree on. He is the Prime Minister.
And he's gone to show solidarity to both parties in that region.
Already we've lost our agreement already, because I don't see him showing much solidarity to people in Gaza at the moment. I mean, he said we show full solidarity to Israel. If you were in Gaza, or if you had family in Gaza, what would you point to this morning as evidence, or what words would you point to this morning as evidence that he is there to show solidarity with people in Gaza?
Well, he did say in the Commons that he's increasing aid to Gaza.
Yeah, but he said in Israel this morning, I'm here to express my solidarity with the Israeli people. He didn't mention people in Gaza.
Well, he has previously mentioned, and whenever he does speak, he mentions that both he has sympathy with both the Jewish and the Muslim community and both people in the region.
But the question today is why is he in Israel? So if he's not doing it while in Israel, that can't be a reason why he's in Israel, can it? And I know we said we weren't going to have an argument.
He has gone to Israel because they are a free country and a democratic country. He's not going to go to Gaza, which is at the moment run by Hamas.
No, but he could have said, I'm here to express my solidarity with the Israeli people and the Palestinian people, and the people of Gaza. He did, and he didn't. So I'm just picking up on just a couple of things you said that I don't think are entirely accurate. But the most important thing you said is that you personally feel encouraged, and
I do, and
that's a good thing.
Why.
And that's a good thing. And I'd like to listen to why.
Okay, so several things. First of all, it's Israel that were attacked, and I'm feeling increasingly like a lot of people have forgotten. Less than 2 weeks ago, Israel had an unprovoked and unprecedented attack, and they are in a country of mourning. We still have all the hostages that are still being held, and we don't know where they are or whether they're alive. And the fact that, and I know that I'm going slightly off-piste here, but the fact that all over the world there are the most unbelievable marches and protests in support of Hamas, with a woman in Scotland that we saw on television wearing a Palestinian flag and reminding Jews where they were in 1940, and also protests going on in Australia and all over the world and in the UK. The fact that a week after Israel was attacked, that London, central London, came to a standstill with people supporting Hamas.
Well, they weren't supporting Hamas. They were. I mean, two people were photographed. Two people were photographed with hang gliders on their back, and then obviously some argument over slogans. But they were doing what you just said you wanted Rishi Sunak to do. They were showing solidarity with the people of Gaza. There
is a lot of support for Hamas.
Well, and that's easily condemned. But it's entirely false to say that London was brought to a standstill by people showing support for Hamas. So, in fact, what you said Rishi Sunak was in Israel to do, but he isn't doing, is exactly what the massive majority of people marching in support of Palestinian people were doing that you're now unhappy about, Karen.
I'm not seeing that as true. There are a lot of people who are supporting just the Palestinians and the Palestinian cause.
Yes.
But there is the most enormous rise in anti-Semitism, and it's something
indeed
that
there is, and also in Islamophobia as well, which is why it might have been better for Rishi Sunak to express his solidarity with everybody, and of course the families in Israel and the families of the 3,000 people who've been killed in Gaza since the retaliation began.
He has done that.
Not today. He hasn't.
I'm sure. Well, he's in Israel.
Well, that's where it would matter most. Because as you said yourself, he can't go to Gaza. There's 3,000 families just a few miles away who've lost family members, and he's not expressing any solidarity with them. That's all. But I really value, and I'm very glad that you've explained your personal. I got to choose my words very carefully. Your personal satisfaction, I think, at this public display of solidarity. But you understand, Karen, that I can't let you portray it as a show of solidarity with both sides when he's only expressed solidarity for one on this trip. And the phone in, as you know, when you rang in, is about this trip. I'd also dispute the idea that people have taken their eye off what I described 40 minutes ago as the greatest act of anti-Semitic mass murder since the Holocaust. I certainly know that hasn't been the case on this radio station. But, 3,000 people have been killed in Gaza and in the West Bank. Israeli marksmen are picking off people. I think the figure has gone up to 60. Report on Sky of some teenagers throwing stones and then being shot by marksmen. So it's very important to remember everybody under fire. And once again, we remind ourselves that we're not going to have our compassion calibrated by the country or the land that people were born in or the sign that they were born under. But that's it. This is what I said would happen. Everyone agrees that it's substantively meaningless but emotionally meaningful. And then you're left with the problem of who is it emotionally meaningful for? And I don't think anyone would argue that people with family in Gaza are watching Rishi Sunak's trip to Israel and thinking, I'm really pleased he's showing solidarity with us.
James O'Brien on LBC. James O'Brien on LBC.
10:51 is the time. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where conflation's not quite the right word, is it? But the consensus, really, that Rishi Sunak is in Israel. So I'm not even going to say solely. I'm just going to say for optics. He is in Israel just to send messages to certain parts of the population, both there and at home. But he is not there, I don't think. Whatever his aides and spokespeople may be saying on and off the record, he's not there with any real hope of making any meaningful difference to anything. Which doesn't mean it was wrong to go. It's just evidence of how trivialised British politics has become, that a bloke who was talking about 7 recycling bins and a meat tax a couple of weeks ago is now being reminded what proper politics and international diplomacy should look like. 10:52 is the time. I told you're listening to. And Kim picks up on that. She says, if you did have family in Gaza, you would be thinking that the English government is not behind them. It's a shame he only mentioned solidarity with Israel, and this has had an impact upon Kim's future voting intentions, which I'm terrified of talking about today for reasons that I'm too terrified to even explain. Nama is in Brent. Nama, what would you like to say?
Hi, James.
Hello.
Thank you for having me. I'd like to say that I think there's a bit of a confusion between compassion and solidarity. I'm a British Israeli. I'm living in London. I have all of my family and friends are in Israel, and we are all shattered for the last 2 weeks, shattered. And despite what we are going through, I can certainly have compassion for Palestinian civilians who are affected, who are killed. I acknowledge that, and I'm hurt by that as well. But if you want to show solidarity for the Palestinian people, that's not to put them in contrary to solidarity with Israel or as the other side. We all need to be opposing Hamas. Whoever wants to bring humanitarian aid to Gaza, whoever wants to elevate the suffering of Palestinian people, need to put whatever lever they can on Hamas to release Israeli hostages. And I think that's the missing link here. And I'm very proud of the Prime Minister to go to Israel. I think the show of solidarity is instrumental in showing Hamas leaders that world leaders do not accept their false propaganda, do not accept the hatred messages. You said to Karen, the caller who spoke just before the break, that Palestinians marching in London weren't supporting Hamas. They were supporting Palestine, but they were chanting Free Palestine. They were chanting from the river to the sea.
But support for a free Palestine is not support for Hamas.
But Gaza is free from Israelis. I think that's what the confusion is. It sounds so wonderful and liberal to say
I'm
free
not confused
Palestine.
by.
I would like to see a
I'm
free
not confused
Palestine
by
alongside
this.
Israel.
A free Palestine would contain people who are free to go to other places.
Well, you should ask Egypt why they're not allowed to go through Egypt then. But, they don't only have a border with Israel.
So you've gone from saying they're free to reminding us that they're not free for two reasons instead of one.
I'm saying that the people who chant Free Palestine do not mean Free Palestine. They do mean destruction of Israel.
I don't allow mind reading on the programme, Norma.
Well, fair enough.
So I speak to people who tell me that they want a free Palestine and that they chanted for it, and they tell me what they mean. So I can't let you call them. I can't. Well, they want people who live in Palestine to be free to go to other places.
If that's what they mean, then I wholeheartedly support that.
So you're showing solidarity. So you're showing solidarity with them then.
Sorry?
So we can show solidarity with them then?
I think we can show compassion to their situation. I think if you really want solidarity in the sense of something that will change Palestinian lives, that will help bring a separate, free Palestinian country alongside Israel, what you need to do right now is to stand by Israel in its aim to destroy Hamas.
And what do you say? So you have compassion for the million displaced people and the families of the 3,000 dead, and of course the million non-displaced people, but not solidarity.
Yeah. No, I do. I just think that.
So what are you confused about?
So I think that saying you should show solidarity to Palestinians is the same time that you show solidarity to Israel. I don't think these two things contradict. I think when you show solidarity
but that's
for Israel,
what we've been saying all morning.
Showing solidarity for Palestinians.
That's what we've been saying all morning. It would be nice. It would be nice for Rishi Sunak to say that he's also here to show solidarity with the victims of Hamas in Palestine, as well as the victims of Hamas in Israel. But he hasn't said that.
Victims of Hamas in Palestine, I would be all for it.
So would I.
I think we are all victims of Hamas.
Well, I agree, but I don't know what you're confused about.
So I'm not confused at all. I think that people are thinking that when someone is showing solidarity to Israel, they are not showing solidarity to Palestine. I think solidarity for Israel.
No. When he says that he's showing solidarity with Israel,
means we are trying to get Hamas off. We are trying to release the hostages. There are over 100 Israeli children being held hostage. I just saw an interview with the Hamas spokesman yesterday who called them prisoners of war.
I am going to have to speak at some point. I appreciate that there's a lot that you want to get off your chest, but the conversation we're having is about Rishi Sunak's visit to Israel, his expression of solidarity with Israel, and the absence of any expression of solidarity or compassion so far for the people in Gaza. What would happen, do you think, if he said that in, for example, a shared press conference with Benjamin Netanyahu? If he said, I urge Israel to perhaps stop killing people in Gaza.
He shouldn't urge Israel to do anything because
why is he there then?
Are being killed.
So why is he there? Why is he there then?
I'll explain. Because the people are being killed in Gaza, their blood is on Hamas' hands.
Right.
Right. If you want to stop people being killed in Gaza, you need to put whatever pressure you can on Hamas to release hostages to be eradicated.
And how is he doing that? Do we know?
Well, I don't. I hope that that's the aim, and I believe that that's the aim of what he's doing. And I think showing solidarity with
and
Israel,
the domestic criticism,
is not going to work.
The domestic criticism of Netanyahu for not really doing anything to seek the hostages rescue, including, of course, from most of their families. Where does that fit into this analysis?
So, I'm careful in speaking about that. I think the majority of people in Israel right now feel like we are in wartime, and there'll be enough time to criticize our own leadership.
No, it's a criticism of the failure to seek the release of the hostages, which you are talking about already. So we can't wait to have a conversation that we're all in the middle of.
Sorry, so I'm not sure if I'm understanding the point.
Okay, so what Rishi Sunak should be doing is urging Hamas to release the hostages, while Benjamin Netanyahu is under criticism in Israel for not doing enough to seek the release of the hostages.
Well, I don't know what is being done behind the scene. I'm hoping.
Well, none of us. Okay, none of us do we? But I mean, a lot of people will be very upset at you suggesting that the innocent people who are dying in Gaza are somehow not being killed by Israeli soldiers.
No, I'm saying that the
blood is on the hands
Israel
of Hamas.
has to defend itself
Yes.
is the terrorist attack by Hamas.
Yes, but this isn't an act of defence, is it?
It is an act of defense.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
There are 100,000 displaced people in Israel. The southern part of Israel is still declared a war zone.
But this
with
then turns
terrorists,
into a game of statistical tennis, which is why I keep reminding everybody listening, and I'll remind you now, that my compassion is not going to be calibrated by where somebody is. You know, if there are 1 million displaced people in Palestine and 3,000 dead, and I've got the same amount of compassion for every single one of them as I have for everybody in a similar situation in Israel.
All I'm saying that this is a war zone, that Hamas started a war against Israel, that Israel has to defend itself. We are left with no other choice.
Okay, and what does success look like?
For me?
No, for the war.
For the war. Bringing back all of the hostages, destroying Hamas, starting, hopefully seeing a moderate Palestinian leadership coming forward and starting a peace process.
And you I think I know the answer to this. You genuinely believe that killing thousands and thousands and thousands of Gazans will achieve that?
I don't. I hope we don't need
because that's the plan, isn't it?
To the part. No, it isn't. Of course it isn't.
Well, it's already up to 3,000 and the ground offensive hasn't started yet.
I don't know what else would you suggest if your country would have suffered.
Listen. It's not my job. It's not my job to suggest anything. It's my job to ask how killing thousands and thousands of people will make a more peaceful and moderate population for the ones left behind. History suggests that's not going to happen, doesn't it?
I can only say firmly that I believe we've been left with no choice following the events of 7th October.
That's absolutely fine, but let's not pretend that it's going to create a moderate and peaceful population in Gaza when...
Well, I don't know what alternative would you suggest. For years and years, since Israel left Gaza in 2005, we've tried to tolerate the situation. There was humanitarian aid coming into Gaza.
It always ends up, this conversation, it always ends up in the same place.
Until a week ago.
Yes, I know all this. Everybody listening, everybody knows all this. But the question is, how will killing hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands of people, how will that help anything? And the answer is, you have to tell yourself it will somehow eradicate Hamas and reduce the threat to Israel. And I understand why you have to tell yourself that. And if I was you, I'd probably tell myself that as well. But I don't see it.
And
I see the opposite. I see the radicalisation of future generations. I see the radicalisation of the people left behind. I see every mourning family more likely to become a sworn enemy of the state of Israel. And I see a perpetuation of the problem for decades to come. And the more death there is, the more grievance there is, the more radicalisation there is, the more mourning there is. But as I say, if I was where you are, I'd have to believe that there was a point to all this other than just a thirst for vengeance. But the question of what is Rishi Sunak doing there, I think we can probably both agree he's unlikely to make a meaningful change to anything that happens on the ground in the next 20 years, never mind the next 20 days. It's 11:02.
James O'Brien on LBC. James O'Brien on LBC.
It's 6 minutes after 11 and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where we turn our attention next to the sort of story that, I mean, it's a grim and ugly tale, but in many ways, in the context of the carnage that we've been discussing for the last nearly 2 full weeks now, it almost feels like a return to normality. It's a tale about police brutality and, I would suggest to you, racism. Well, it's not just me that would suggest to you racism. The mother of the victim in this case would as well. And a quick word on that, actually, because I do think that the current Home Secretary's comments are very much of a piece with attempts to claim that institutional racism doesn't exist or that it's somehow woke to express concern about such things. I think what's between the lines often on comments like that are are deeply significant and very easy to read quite often. And I said at the outset, one of the things I love most about this country is how successful our multiculturalism and diversity has been, even as senior politicians from ethnic minorities insist, in Suella Braverman's case, that it has failed. And Rishi Sunak, of course, lacks the, I don't know what he lacks, the stones, I think, to bring her into line, even though he clearly disagrees with her on that. I mention all of that because the attempts to deny it are racist. When I have messages from people accusing people of colour of playing the race card or grievance, it's absolutely incredible. Social media, of course, has become a place where people can claim that the racism goes in the other direction, that the minorities with no power are exercising racism over the majority with almost all the power. And you have not just the Macpherson report into the Metropolitan Police, but Dame Louise Casey's report. Everyone seems to overlook that, you know. It gave her a job to look into the state of the Met. She came back and said it's riven with misogyny and racism. And senior Conservative politicians sort of just skip it or talk about how much things have improved since Macpherson. It's breathtaking to me. And in a way, as you can probably tell, I'm postponing the point at which I have to describe to you the story that we're going to talk about next, because it's just gross. It's truly gross. The Metropolitan Police have admitted that a 13-year-old child playing with a water pistol was rammed off his bike by armed police and knocked to the ground before officers pointed their submachine guns at him. Now, I just want you to do something for me. I want you to do one or both of these two thought experiments. I want you to remember what you were like when you were 13, or I want you to picture someone you love aged 13. Okay, have you got that picture now in your mind? It's either you at the age of 13 or it's someone you love at the age of 13. You can take your pick. It could be a boy or a girl, but I think in this case it might be better if it's a boy. And now I want you to listen to that again. So you are listening to this now through your 13-year-old ears, or with your loved 13-year-old in mind. The Metropolitan Police have admitted that a 13-year-old child playing with a water pistol was rammed off his bike by armed police and knocked to the ground before officers pointed their submachine guns at him. The Met has apologised for the incident, in which the boy was also handcuffed, which happened in broad daylight in Hackney in July. I mean, the story is breathtaking. The boy had been playing near his home with a blue plastic water pistol with his sister, who had a pink one. At 3:45 on Wednesday the 9th of July, police say an officer, quotes, saw a male on a bicycle pointing what was believed to be a handgun at a young girl, end quotes. 2 armed response vehicles arrived at the scene. The Met said specialist officers are trained on specific tactics, including using vehicles to bring cyclists to a stop. This tactic was used in this case, causing the boy to fall off his bike. He was rammed off his bike. Firearms officers left the car and he was handcuffed and detained. It quickly became clear that he was not in possession of a firearm. He was de-arrested at the scene. Imagine now that it was David Cameron's 13-year-old son that this happened to, or mine, or yours. Imagine it was Rishi Sunak's child that this happened to. What would the news coverage be like? Okay, this family's not famous. So just imagine it were a middle-class white 13-year-old playing with water pistols with his sister on a street in Chiswick or Chelsea. Can you look me in the eye and tell me that the police would have behaved in exactly the same way? And if you can't, can you tell me why they behaved like this? Because in many ways it gets worse. The Met accepts that the boy, who is black, suffered trauma, and his mother said that his race had led to his treatment by armed officers and brief arrest on suspicion of having a firearm. The Met says it was called to a report of a gun in the street and was obliged under its policy to treat all firearms as dangerous until proved otherwise. It said no misconduct issues had been identified. No misconduct issues has been identified. A 13-year-old child playing with a water pistol was rammed off his bike by armed police, knocked to the ground before officers pointed their submachine guns at him and arrested him. The Metropolitan Police said no misconduct issues had been identified. His mother said it's been a deeply traumatic experience for him, for me, and for our family as a whole. The attitude of the police to him and to me is shown up in the words of the senior officer at the scene when I protested to him about the conduct of his officers. He told me I was lucky that they had not arrested my son. For what? For playing with a brightly coloured plastic water gun with his younger siblings on the streets behind our home. For being a black boy on the streets of Hackney. She's also said, I know, and the police know, that they would not have treated my son in the way that they did if he had been a white 13-year-old boy. I know that they would not have treated me with the contempt shown towards me or described me as aggressive if I was not black. 13 minutes after 11 is the time. The gut reaction to this story would, for me, once have been to defend the police. And I'm thinking back a long, long way, possibly before I started doing this for a living. I'm thinking that policing by consent is crucial to our society, and that the police, because of the way I was raised, the police are to be trusted. And even after the racist murder of Stephen Lawrence and the abject failure of the Metropolitan Police to investigate that with anything like the alacrity and enthusiasm they would have deployed had Stephen been white, and even after having the privilege of getting to know Baroness Doreen Lawrence, I still retained this childlike regard for the police, and I had it until I didn't notice it had gone, really, until quite recently. Partly, I think, the Sarah Everard case and the Carrick case that's back in the news today. That was when I began to realise that perhaps it had gone. Partly when the WhatsApp groups with the appalling misogyny and the appalling abuses being shared by officers who knew that their colleagues would like it too. So that bad apple argument disappeared immediately. Talking to Mina Smallman about what happened to her daughters and what the police officers did there. All of these things have created an environment, for me, a personal environment in which I don't trust. I don't have a position of natural trust anymore. And remember, I'm white, so you're going to have to give me a break on this, because I know that if I'd grown up black, I'd be different. So what's the question here for you and for me to do together? The question is this. I know, and the police know, that they would not have treated my son in the way they did if he had been a white 13-year-old boy. Is she right? 0345 6060 973. And just for the avoidance of doubt, if my 13-year-old was rammed off a bike by a police car and surrounded by officers pointing submachine guns at him, I think I'd be a bit bloody aggressive when I turned up. Don't you? For playing with a water pistol. Let's be absolutely clear. Absolutely incredible. So how would you... Let's imagine, and this may not be the right way to do it, but this is what I'm going to start with. Okay? Let's imagine someone is sceptical of this mother's claims. Let's imagine they're not racist or nasty. They're not coming at this from a place of good. You can't trust these little so-and-sos. Let's imagine that they are just a little naive, perhaps, or maybe they're even right. but they are sceptical of the mum's claims that they would not have treated her son like that if he'd been a white 13-year-old boy. How do you persuade them that she's right? Or how do you persuade me that she's wrong? 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. When the mother of a 13-year-old boy rammed off his bike by armed police, knocked to the ground before officers pointed their submachine guns at him and briefly arrested him for playing with bright blue plastic water pistols with his sister who had a pink one. How do you persuade someone who thinks that the mother is, quotes, playing the race card, end quotes, that they're wrong? How do you do it? 0345 6060 973. Coppers was very limited on what they can and can't say to me. But I would be interested in knowing what the hell you think happened. DCS James Conway, in charge of policing for Hackney, said this incident was understandably extremely distressing for the boy involved, as well as the rest of his family. We know it may cause public concern, and we want to help the public understand why we responded in the way we did. I apologised soon after to the family. I don't understand how they responded in the way they did. Maybe they should just ban water pistols. That would be Suella Braverman's suggestion, I presume. It's 18 minutes after 11.
James O'Brien on LBC. James O'Brien on LBC.
21 minutes after 11 is the time, and someone has sent me the video of Sinead O'Connor singing Black Boys on Mopeds, which you're right, does seem a little bit appropriate, and of course reminds us that for many people there'll be nothing shocking at all about what I've just read out, and in some ways I look forward to speaking to those people. Quick word of warmth though from Jeff first. After the week we've had, he writes, I don't think I've looked forward to Mystery Hour more. You and me both. That'll be with us at 12. Amanda is in Haringey. Amanda, what would you like to say?
Hi, hello.
James.
I just think
James.
this is... I listen to you all the time when I'm working.
It's just outrageous. I don't know why I bother. Sorry. What am I, chopped liver? Honestly. No, go on. No, what do you want to say, John?
You're James O'Brien.
Carry on, John.
And this was mostly, this is definitely driven by race.
Go on.
Black is still synonymous with danger, threat, evil, and we've got a Met Commissioner who declines to say that the force is institutionally racist, misogynistic, etc.
Yeah.
Things like this will always happen. I'm a teacher by profession. In previous schools that I've worked at, black boys have come to school to say that they had been stopped in their uniform.
Yeah.
So adultification plays into this. The most definitely race plays into this, and ultimately ongoing training, budget for ongoing training also plays into this. Understanding whiteness as an ideology, understanding whiteness and its proximity to power, adultification, black being synonymous with danger and a threat, all of these play into the mix here. The Met Commissioner not acknowledging and calling out.
How significant is that? So his rationale, and I've not really heard him be challenged on this, because frankly I think I've only heard him being interviewed by people who would agree with him about this. So why is it so significant that when an independent inquiry finds his force is institutionally racist, he rejects the use of the phrase institutionally racist? Because
language is fundamental, isn't it? We hold people to account when language is used, and we know that this is. First of all, if we're looking at racism, of course we have to hold that mirror up and look at ourselves, but we also have to apply that term to the systems and the structures that operate to uphold racism. So it goes beyond saying that one is individually racist. Of course, we have an individual and a collective responsibility to address race and racism, but you can't produce any more reports to tell us that it is what it is. With you've got the latest report, the Black British Voices done by The Voice. We don't need any more data. We almost
so what should they have done?
Rip up the script and start again.
Yes, I understand what you're saying. I'm struck by two things, really. The first is no misconduct issues have been identified. So, that situation may change, but technically they behaved as they are trained to behave when they fear that someone is in possession of a gun. And
so I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, please interrupt away, as long as you get my name right.
You're James all day long.
Carry on.
Again, this is about the optics through which we have, I suppose, looking at this incident. You probably got no black people around that IOPC table doing the investigation to raise their head above the parapet and address and call it out as racism. You've got, the people who've done the investigation, the IOPC, those guys are probably white. And if you're looking through a white gaze, of course you're not going to see that this was a racist incident. You're just going to go by the book and you're not even trained to look at it. So from you haven't even got these anti-racist lens, how can it be anything but? And this is why there's a lack of trust in terms of IOPC investigations, because it's seen quite often on incidents that are blatantly screaming racism that they are upheld. So there we go again. Trust in the IOPC, 0. Trust in the Met Police, 0.
I hear
Trust
you.
in the Met,
I don't.
0.
This one would have been IOPC, wouldn't it? I didn't read that out in the story. But for them to conclude that there'd been no, it's the Met that say there's been no misconduct, not the IOPC at this stage. That's why I suggested that the story might change. But either way,
and therein lies a lack of training.
Well, either way, they're marking their own homework. So
there we go.
What would have happened if it was me and my sister when I was 13?
It probably wouldn't have happened to you or your sister, James. It most definitely.
So no one would have made the call in the first place. Probably no one would have saw a 13-year-old boy with a water pistol.
As a threat.
Yeah,
absolutely. White, synonymous with good, angelic, and everything pure. Whereas a black boy cannot be a black boy. He's got to be a young black man. He cannot just be a young black child on his scooter, on his bike.
And there it is. No, I hear you. And I mean, I feel a bit silly asking this question now, but how do you persuade? So I don't know that I'm going to give any oxygen to people ringing in with very predictable expressions of racism and or scepticism, but how do you convince someone who is convincible that this is all about the lad's ethnicity? This is all about.
How do you convince someone who is convincible?
Yeah, because there'd be plenty of people who are not convincible. People who are, sending me messages.
You're not going to convince them.
No.
So you're not going to convince them, and one has to work with the willing.
So how do you persuade a willing skeptic on this that it wouldn't happen to a 13-year-old white boy? Or even if it did, it would not be normalised.
Well, I'm thinking if they're willing to understand, they will understand the proximity exactly, and the
That's
proximity
a funny one.
to.
Yes.
Yeah, you've kind of answered your own question. The proximity.
What do you need? What do you need? That's why I did the thing at the beginning. I think I hope when I said, imagine you were 13, or just think of a 13-year-old you love, and you can't hold on to it then because it was not in a billion years would that have happened to me. Not in a billion years.
There we go, and you can put hand on heart and say that because your little girl, your little boy would not have been seen as a threat. Through the piercing eyes of whoever called the police on this poor young black boy, according to whoever eyes were on him, he was deemed a threat.
Thank you.
If a black boy cannot be a black boy...
Well, he's guilty of being black while playing.
There we go. And
it's a new offence. It's a new offence, being black while playing with a water pistol. Amanda, thank you. It's coming up to 11:30. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. And the point is, of course, if you justify this behaviour by citing crime statistics, or then you're not proving that you're not racist, you're proving that you are. So you'd have to point out to me all the other areas of life where you think everyone should be treated as if they're guilty until proven innocent. Should we start with paedophilia, shall we? Where the massive majority of offenders are white. So do you think all white men? What about radio presenters? There's been some terrible stories in recent years about radio presenters doing disgusting things. So should we treat all white radio presenters as if they are child abusers? Because that's what the statistics tell us. Much more likely. Of course you don't think that, so stop being so stupid, honestly.
James O'Brien on LBC. James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 26 minutes to 12. You are listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where we continue to examine the case of the mother who was roused by a neighbour to discover that her 13-year-old son had been rammed off his bike by armed police and, had submachine guns pointed at him, and subsequently was accused of being aggressive by the officers to whom she was complaining. According to her, the Metropolitan Police have apologised for many of the incidents and allegations that I've just described, and subsequently the force has found that it didn't do anything wrong. So it's apologised for the incident in which the boy was also handcuffed, but concluded that it did nothing wrong. And the contention from the mum is that it wouldn't happen to a white lad. I wonder how you prove that to someone who is keen not to believe it. Ace is in Brent. Ace, what would you like to say?
Good morning, sir. So just a few points. So what we trust our police officers to protect us with the integrity. And what they're saying in this case is that our trained firearm police officers have not got the integrity to distinguish between a 13-year-old boy carrying a water pistol and somebody carrying a potentially harmful weapon. Now, I just want to take you quickly because it all ties in.
It will have to be quickly.
Over 100 officers stood down and said, firearms officers said, we don't want to have firearms badges because we need to make those split decisions.
Yes.
So on one hand, the police are arguing that they want to be able to make this quick decisions, but at the same time, they're saying they haven't got the integrity to distinguish between.
Well, that's not quite fair, is it? So
it is
because they didn't shoot this lad, thank God.
Yeah, but the trauma that this child has to live with for the rest of his life by having a hard stop like that whilst just enjoying his childhood.
Yeah, but I think. Listen, I'm not here to defend the actions of the officer fatally shot by the officer who fatally shot Chris Cabba. Not today, at least, because I'm not across it and not ready for that conversation. Ace, I didn't know you were going to bring him into it. But hang on, you can't respond to what I've said until I've said it.
Okay.
The 13-year-old boy with a water pistol, I think the reason why they don't compare with each other is that the reasonable suspicion that he was posing a threat to the public is not the same as the officers involved in the Chris Cabba shooting would argue. So your point, and I can see why you've made it, but your point doesn't work. They're not simultaneously saying we can and we can't make these decisions. They're deploying the correct tactics in both places. It's just that with this 13-year-old boy, they never thought they were about to come under fire to the point where they pulled a trigger, and with Chris Cabba they did. So it just doesn't work as it doesn't work as a parallel.
The child had a water pistol, and it's just this constant over policing.
Yeah, I agree with that. I just wanted to nip that comparison in the bud because I don't think it's helpful to either case.
Thanks for nipping that comparison in the bud. And in relation to the institutional racism, just quickly, it's very important that they acknowledge that they're institutionally racist because, as your previous caller covered, there is individual racism and there's institutional racism. And unfortunately, the black community in the UK are constantly over-policed, and the tactics that are used is institutional. And until the Met acknowledge that they are institutionally racist and change their processes, we are constantly at the receiving end of over-policing. You know, we tend to get higher sentences when we go to court, and the list just goes on. So we live in a two-tier system, and we are just sick and tired of being at the receiving end of this racism that's disguised as what they like to say is, I'm just doing my job.
How significant do you think it is that the head of the Met, the Chief Constable, rejects the phrase, says he won't use the phrase institutionally racist?
Absolutely disgusting, and it's very significant because once again what it does, it undermines all of the trauma that so many of people in so many different situations from ethnic backgrounds are constantly experiencing at the hands of the police. So it undermines everything that is wrong with this institutional system, and at some point they have to take accountability.
Well, it's what you see, isn't it? It's two people looking at the same scene or the same person and seeing two different things, and that is institutional. I think you're right, Ace. I quite like this message from Sarah. Thank you for this one. I'm a white middle-class woman with a 13-year-old boy in Hackney who also likes to play with brightly coloured plastic water guns with his younger siblings in the summer. I am 100% certain that this would not have happened to our son, but I'm not surprised that it has happened to this boy and his family. It's awful. Socially, Hackney is a very well-mixed community, but it is continually ghettoised by the police. This only perpetuates the cycle where young black boys are treated unfairly. Emma is in Balham. Emma, what would you like to say?
Hello, James.
Hello.
Good morning.
Hello.
Very good on Palestine, by the way. That was an Israel thing. I was very impressed.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say that this, going back to your question of how do you convince a middle-class white woman that
doesn't
this
have to be
exists.
middle-class or a woman, but anyway.
As a white,
yes.
well, I'm from a middle-class white background,
Right.
and I have to do this convincing quite a lot
Do you?
because I've been with my partner, who's black, for nearly 30 years. I have
Right.
an 18-year-old son, and we've experienced tons of racism. I mean, I don't want to go into every single episode here, but I've had racist police officers saying stuff direct to our face. I've had to get my partner out of Kennington police station. I've had the police tell me that it's not illegal to stab you on private property. That was an interesting high point. I've had the police tell us that bad brown and black people burgled us, and I have obviously a mixed race son, and what I do realise as a white person is that when I'm with my partner, it's a very different universe to when I'm on my own. And I've experienced that also in the States. We've been arrested for armed robbery in the States.
Pardon?
Yeah, I know. Like the day after we got there.
How did that happen? Just out of interest.
We were basically going to the biggest sweet shop in the world in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
And we were parking, and suddenly we were surrounded by police cars. And being, a partner of many years, I just assumed that my partner was parking wrong and was beginning to tell him off. You've just parked wrong. Anyway, I think what it was, they took us to the side of the road. They kept us. They didn't see our 9-year-old child in the back.
Right.
But I did think at that point, they've all got guns. They're going to shoot him, my partner.
But what was their suspicion based on? Sorry,
They said that somebody had called in an exact description of us. They described my dress exactly. They described him exactly. They didn't. It's basically somebody who's racist who doesn't like a mixed race couple, and I would imagine that's what happened with this boy.
You don't know. I mean, you don't know who's called it in, but by all accounts, it would have been. You say it would have been fairly obvious that it was a boy playing with his sister. It wasn't obvious to the police when they turned up, was it?
No.
But again, it's two people looking at the same scene and seeing two completely different things.
Yeah. It's a different world. It is a different world.
I hear you, Emma. I know, I do. Crikey, I'm never going to look at sweet shops in quite the same way now. Thank you. Squeezing a couple more calls. Tyrone is in Lambeth. Tyrone, what would you like to say?
Oh, is that Mr. James Old Bizzle, yeah?
That's me, mate. What can I do you for?
Well, basically, I just think that the police, they don't know what they're doing. They don't know at all. And the lady said earlier, as black men, it's like we have to grow up from children. We have to teach our children to understand that they're going to deal with you a funny way. And black police, they're even worse. And the reason I say that is because I suppose I sort of understand it. It's like they feel like they've got something to prove. Because they're in an environment.
I mean, that's not. I'm interested in that. It's not pertinent to the conversation that we're having here because we don't know the identity of the officers involved. Although clearly the one that the mother is most upset with was not black. He was clearly white. How do you learn that lesson? How do you learn that lesson that you are going to be treated differently from me?
You learn it the hard way. I mean, for me, I think the first time I decided I don't like police, I was about 6.
Okay.
I think they kicked off my front door, and I was with my mum and dad and my little brother who was 3 at the time. They kicked off the door and they came in and they said that they realised they kicked off the wrong door after I'd already punched the police officer in his balls because he got too close to my mother.
How old were you at the time?
I was about 7.
And they kicked in the wrong front door and piled into your house. I mean, they wouldn't have known that. You put me in a right odd situation now. So they wouldn't have known that it was a black family on the other side of the door when they were kicking it in, would they? So that's not an act of. Listen, I'm not suggesting for a minute that I wouldn't have been utterly traumatised by it and developed a negative view of the police, but it's not evidence of institutional racism. I think the phone line's gone south. It is 11:44. I might squeeze in once more. I'm just going to do a quick idiot's corner. This is from Helen. Surely a 13-year-old boy knows what's happening in the world. So why carry a water pistol? Water pistols are for playing in the garden. Helen, let me introduce you to something called flats. A block of flats, for example. Yeah? See, I don't know whether this lad lives in a flat or lives in a house or lives on a canal boat. But the idea that you only play with water pistols in your garden seems to me, well, that's why you're being put where you're being put. It's 11:44.
James O'Brien on LBC. James O'Brien on LBC.
11:47 is the time, and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. I want to return now to the story that we were alluding to yesterday. It wasn't the central source of our conversation, the explosion at the hospital in Gaza, which prompted an astonishing volley of misinformation and misreporting, not just on social media, of course, but also in established media as well. And while there is still confusion over precisely what happened, the weight of suspicion has shifted, and Joe Biden revealed yesterday that the intelligence sources to which he was party as President of the United States of America leant towards it being more likely that it was a misfiring rocket from within Gaza than any ordnance that had been launched by Israel. But we mentioned yesterday, and I touched on it with a couple of callers and with Robert Fox, the defence journalist, we touched on the question of how it can be solved. A lot of people calling for independent investigation, which is tricky given the difficulties regarding access to Gaza. Robert suggested that in other circumstances, the examination of shrapnel was one of the, if not the only, truly reliable way of establishing what had landed, what had blown up, and therefore where it had come from. But I was following a lot of open source intelligence operatives on social media, and that's where you use. We've spoken to Elliot Higgins, of course, at Bellingcat quite a few times on this programme, and they use, by open source, stuff that anyone can find if they're so minded to do so, and they use that to undertake a sort of forensic analysis of what's happened. And I wanted to talk to someone who knows that world well. Harry Kemsley is the president of the Janes Group, which is well, they do lots of things at Janes, actually, but in this context, it's an open source company providing insights to intelligence agencies and governments around the world. He's also an RAF veteran of 25 years. Harry, thank you for your time. How big a role will open source intelligence have to play, do you think, in establishing exactly what happened in Gaza?
I think, James, it might be the only source eventually that will answer this question for us. Clearly, as you've said, in the perfect world, which we clearly don't live in, we would have a forensic analysis of the scene. We would have a look at the collateral damage. We look at the pattern of the weapon's destructive force. We look at the fragments, as you say, and we would have all that as evidence that we'd piece together into a probably conclusive answer to the question that we're all seeking for. In the open source environment, however, we adopt a multifaceted approach. So we're looking at a variety of things. As you've said, the forensic approach is difficult here. So we're looking at bringing together imagery analysis, on the scene, human reports. We're going to look at the blast damage that we can see. We can then match that against expert understanding of how weapons operate. So as you can appreciate, a mortar round, an air-delivered round, a rocket, they all have quite characteristic behaviors. They have quite characteristic destructive force, and those things can be modeled. And so what you're doing with open source is essentially coming up with a series of potential scenarios and trying to eliminate the least likely, the least credible. and then finding additional evidence that would perhaps support the ones that seem more credible. So that's the piecing together of multifaceted expertise and evidence to try and come up with a credible answer.
How do you, I mean, this is probably a silly question, but I'm interested in the answer, so I'll ask it anyway. How do you establish the veracity of the images that you're studying?
It's a very, very good question, and it's one of the key aspects of open source intelligence versus open source information. And you can appreciate the difference being the intelligence is really about deriving an insight that you can believe that is credible, and that's really based on three distinct but overlapped things. First of all, you need to be looking at something for a long time to understand what looks reasonable, what you believe to be the normal pattern of behavior, for example. Secondly, you're not going to take a single source. One image, particularly these days with the availability of quite incredible technological capabilities to create images, the so-called deepfakes, for example, or indeed the use of images that have nothing to do with that location. The geolocation of the image can all help you start to isolate what is real versus what is created or being used for certain purposes, maybe propaganda. The third then is the tradecraft, the expertise that you bring to it. So it's not just a matter of looking at an image. It's not just a matter of listening to report. It's about bringing it all together with the expertise and judgment that actually humans are still very much better than machines at doing. And that human curation of all of that information to come up with a credible set of scenarios that can be believed and examined further, that's the way you deal with these concerns about veracity.
What will be happening now then? So people will be trying to collate as much footage as they can, and there's not going to be much by way of eyewitness testimony, is there, or is there? Do you speak to people as well as examining imagery?
Over a period of time around incidents like this,
yes,
you generally find that information becomes available as people come to realize that, for example, CCTV cameras in the district, if there were any, may have been recording the way the sound moves around a city that could be recorded by different devices.
Oh, wow.
The images from overhead. Of course, there'll be a lot of satellites looking at this part of the world right now for all kinds of purposes. Signals intelligence that will come out. Some of it will be open source. Most of it will be classified. All of these things will become available. And over a period of time, they'll become additions to the picture that you're building and the understanding you're gathering.
That's fascinating. And how is it overseen in the case of a territory like Gaza? Who would undertake this with maximum access to stuff that might be classified?
Well, the classified source, of course, will be the exquisite capabilities of the governments of the world, many of whom, of course, will be looking very, very closely at the minutiae of all of what's going on right now. And they'll be getting insights that you won't find in open source, obviously. The US, the NATO nations, Eastern nations, frankly, there is very few organizations in the world that have the kind of capabilities I'm alluding to that won't be looking at this in great detail, exactly as they have been with other parts of the world, like the Ukraine situation and the situation that almost developed in Kosovo, of course. So these things are pervasive, they are very powerful, and they'll be used for an understanding of these situations by the governments and agencies that I'm talking about.
So knowing what you know, how confident are you that there will be a definitive answer to the question of what happened?
I think the word definitive is an interesting word, because definitive implies a level of certainty that would be evidential. It would be, in a courtroom, you could say that there was a reasonable doubt met, or not met, I should say. That is difficult to say at this stage. Certainly from what we've seen at Jane's, bringing together the imagery, the reports that have come from the ground, the other intelligence that's available through a variety of sources that is open to us. You bring that together with the expertise that we have, particularly around weapon systems that are available to Hamas, how they work, available systems that are available to the Israelis, how they work, and what they characteristically do in terms of the destructive kinetic force. Bring those things together, and we believe we'll have credible scenarios. Whether they're definitive or not, I'm afraid only time will tell.
So balance of probabilities then, really. Big balance.
I think we're looking at the most likely, the most believable as being the most likely outcome from the work that we're doing right now. And that will be available to us within days of now. We're getting quite close to, we believe, a small set of more credible scenarios. As we look for more evidence, and more evidence, as I've indicated earlier, James, will become available to us, because these things just are found.
You've preempted my next question, actually, with that. So it shows how good you are at what you do. But I'm interested also in the question of credibility and independence. Regardless of what is concluded by you or by any other organisation, there will, in this case, obviously be countless people who will refuse to accept a conclusion that they don't like, and they will claim conspiracy or they will claim bias. You know that. How do for people who are not conspiracy theory minded, how do you establish trust? How do you establish that this is a trusted source and a credible analysis?
Well, I smile when you say conspiracy, because one of the great things about conspiracies is they generally require a level of intelligence and a level of secrecy that just doesn't exist in the human race, in my experience. But moving past that, the reality about the evidence that we bring together is that it's about providing a multifaceted, if you like, triangulated view of what we believe the answer to be. It's then up to the individual, the organizations, the people of the world to look at that evidence and to make their own judgment. If I'm determined not to believe what I'm told, I'm not going to believe it. There's always going to be a better answer, the one I wanted to hear rather than the one that's in front of me. I think it's the job of an organization like Jane's and other colleagues in both government and non-government service to provide the evidence that we can see, do that in a credible way, and allow people to make their judgments accordingly. In time, history will judge.
So, if it were a jigsaw, then you're explaining each individual piece to people before and after showing them the completed jigsaw.
Indeed. I think we need to see the picture of the jigsaw puzzle as well, right? Because we can get lost in the detail of the individual pieces, to use your analogy, but we do need to see the big picture. And the big picture is hundreds, nay, thousands of people have had their lives destroyed in the recent times in that part of the world. And that needs to be explained because we want to try and learn lessons from this to stop it happening in the future.
And finally, Harry, with your background, military background, and now at Jane's, how good are the journalists who are kind of now embarking on similar? I mean, obviously, you can't talk about all of them, but are they doing a good job? Are they moving in the right direction?
Journalism, particularly in the war zones, is a very, very difficult thing to do. And I genuinely respect those that put themselves in difficult places to do the best they can to report to all of us outside of those war zones what they're seeing and the realities of what's happening to the people on the ground. As I mentioned a second ago, the reality of war is the impact on civilian populations very often. But in answer to your question, of course it varies. There will be those media outlets that have a particular agenda. Maybe that's driven by political affiliation. Maybe that's delivered by a variety of other biases that might be there. What I'm delighted to see is how many journalists are striving to deliver an unbiased, unfettered view of what's actually happening on the ground, particularly in relation to the impact that's happening on the civilians in all parts of this region.
Thank you. That was absolutely fascinating, Harry Kemsley. Not every interview leaves me completely clear about all the things that I wasn't clear about before it started. So I'm very, very grateful to you. Harry, of course, the president of the Jane's Group, an open source, non-classified company providing insights to intelligence agencies and governments around the world. I mean, that was a very grown-up conversation, so it's a little bit embarrassing to admit that I nearly got the giggles halfway through when I used the word definitive and suddenly remembered that Mystery Hour was coming up around the corner and I had to bite my tongue and stop myself from when he said it's very, very hard to go definitive. I had to bite my tongue and say, well, no, it isn't. We do it all the time between 12 and 1 on LBC, and it is now 12 and I am on LBC, so I can prove it to you. This is the part of the week where you can achieve the sort of satisfaction never ordinarily available anywhere else on your radio dial. If you have a question that needs an answer, a riddle that needs a solution, a mystery that needs solving, well, now's the time to do it.
James O'Brien on LBC. James O'Brien on LBC.
4 minutes after 12 is the time, and there's always a little frisson of nostalgia for me on Thursdays when we are doing Mystery Hour and there are by-elections unfolding, because that's why we invented it. It's a way of guaranteeing, as close as one can come to a guarantee, that politics will not intrude upon at least 1 hour of the programme, or potentially problematic politics. Crikey, there's a little tongue twister for you. That was unexpected. Potentially problematic politics. Picked a pepper. It's Mystery Hour. If you don't know what it is, sit tight. You'll soon work it out. If you do know what it is, then you don't need me to tell you that you're about to have a much more uplifting hour than we've managed elsewhere this week. If you've got a question that needs an answer, give me a call and someone else who knows the answer will ring in with it. The great news is that you can win a Mystery Hour board game, and you can do so by being my favourite contributor of the week. It doesn't matter whether you're asking a question or answering one, or making a fool of yourself, somewhere in between those two positions. It is. You can find out more about it at mysteryhour.co.uk, soon to be available in new outlets, including Argos, just in time for the Christmas rush. But you can win one by being brilliant today, or you can buy one by going to mysteryhour.co.uk. My mate Gary's little boy was playing it this morning. It was one of the first things I saw on WhatsApp when I got up. A little picture of William who just laid it all out, although whether or not he had time for a game before school, I do not know. 5 minutes after 12 is the time. Full terms and conditions are at lbc.co.uk. So it's lbc.co.uk for the terms and conditions on winning one, mysteryhour.co.uk for very straightforward opportunity to buy one. Jeff is in St Albans. Jeff, question or answer?
Hello, James. Good afternoon. It's a question. My question is, when you buy a bin for the kitchen and the bin liners, they're sold in litres, and yet you never put water in them.
No, but litres are not just, what else would you use, Jeff?
Well, you can see how big the bin is when you go and buy it, if it's going to fit the kitchen or not.
Yeah, but how much rubbish will it hold?
Well, as much as
no, but you don't. No, it's chicken and egg, Jeff.
No, that's the egg.
No, it's chicken and egg because buying the bin with litres on it is a consequence of buying bags that are measured in litres.
But why would a bag be measured in litres?
What else are you going to measure it in? What else are you going to measure it? What?
Size.
No, but that doesn't really work.
Oh, James.
No, it doesn't, because you could have different shaped bins that take the same bag, because it's the amount of litres that they hold that you need to establish before buying bags.
But why litres?
Because there's nothing else you could use. What else would you use? Tennis balls?
Well, I think I might win the game for the silliest question by the sound of things, James.
But do you see, though, because you've got a big empty thing, and you need to know how much it holds. What
and
unit?
Yet when you buy a saucepan, James, you buy it by the width of it when you can see exactly how big it is too. And that should
but you're never going to go out and buy a saucepan liner, are you?
No, but the saucepan is sold in width.
Yes, but there's only one shape.
No, you can get all different shapes of that sort of thing.
Well, but no, I don't. One of us is missing a point here, and I'm fairly confident it's you. But I'm not 100% certain of it. But I think I think the point is that you can't think of anything else, any other unit of measurement that you would use to describe how much rubbish.
Medium, large, like a Costa coffee?
Well, no, because you've got millions of different sizes of bin. I've got at least 5 different sizes in my own house. It's a volume. It's to measure the volume that something can hold. I think it would always be litres. It doesn't have to be liquid.
But litres are liquid.
Usually.
It tells you nothing, James. To be fair, you buy a 50-litre bin. It tells you nothing.
Volume. It's a measure of volume. It tells you everything you need to know. It tells you it will fit in a 50-litre bin. Volume. Height versus width.
It's on height.
What? No, because then you could have a narrow bin. Or a big fat bin that are the same height. Honestly, I'm getting increasingly confident that it's you that's missing something here. Right, I'll put it on the board, all right?
Thank you, James.
But I'm not sure, even if we get a correct answer, I've got a sense that you're not going to accept it.
Well, I will, James. I will accept
Promise?
it. That's why
it's like talking about the Middle East, this, Jeff, honestly. Right, you're on. Let's find out why are bin bags and indeed bins measured in litres. But I think the answer to why a bin is measured in litres is because bin bags are. So the real question for Jeff is why are bin bags measured in litres? Matthew's in Redhill. Matthew, question or answer?
Question, please, James.
Carry on, mate.
James, you have airports and seaports, train stations and bus stations. But why don't you have a train port or a plane station?
Train port or a plane. What's the difference between a station and a port?
Effectively, but why did we decide boats and planes are one and trains and buses are another?
I quite like that question. I think. Well, originally, would it have been international travel? Originally, I know we do domestic flights now, but ports would be boats. Ports.
But you could have bus stations on the continent.
That's why I'm not sure
countries.
I like the question. That's my little reservation, Matthew, is that it might be a bit like saying, why do we call eggs eggs and chickens chickens? Do you see what I mean? They are two different. A train leaves a station, and a plane leaves an airport, a bus station. So if it's got wheels, it's a station, because something to do with stationery.
But a plane has wheels to land.
That's also
Otherwise, it's gone a bit wrong.
That's very true, actually. But it's not. It doesn't have wheels to travel. It's not going to work, that, is it? The wheels. Let's forget the wheels. All right. I'll put it on the list, but I don't know why. So really, it's why is it an airport and a train station? What's the difference between a port and a station?
Yeah,
I like it. But I've got just a little fear that either there won't be an answer or the answer will render the question less exciting than it currently is. Thank you, though, Matthew. And speaking of exciting, Stephen in Gateshead has been in touch to point out that he says, you've got how many bins, James? Does Rishi know? I've got 2 bins that take bin liners. So, to be clear, and one of them is in the garage, and the other one has got a little recycling drawer underneath. But then we've got bins in all the, like waste paper baskets, which sometimes there will be little liners in, but not like in the bathroom or something. So yeah, I don't want to steal 7 Bins Sunak's title. I don't want to become 7 Bins Jim. Martin's in Gravesend. Martin, question or answer?
Question, please, James.
Carry on.
So I've got a cat who's a tabby cat who's got lots of different colours in her hair.
Yeah,
but when I brush her with a brush,
yeah,
all of the fluff comes out grey as one colour. Why is that?
I think it might be the same reason why the fluff in your belly button is blue.
Why would that be? Because I wear blue clothes?
I don't know. Just trying to think of a parallel. So that you don't. Every hair looks similar, does it? It looks the same. You've got a grey clump when you clean the brush.
Yeah, it's all exactly the same when it comes out. But when it's on her coat, it's all obviously a tabby colour.
So you would expect to have distinct. So if you go to the hairdressers, and you get to my stage of life, you can see on your tunic that you wear, you can see some grey hairs and some normal coloured hairs, can't you? You can see.
Exactly.
Whereas your cat, it all comes the same. Have you separated any of the hairs, or are you just confining it to clump examination at the moment?
In fact, I've had to do it recently because she got a fair few clumps in her fur.
Oh.
So I've sort of been brushing her quite a lot lately, but and having to cut a couple of bits out as well.
Right.
But when it all comes out,
and it's all the same colour. It's all the same. Well, that's an interesting question. I shall find out for you, Martin. Is she all right? She's all right now. She's been declumped.
Yeah, she's all fine. She's getting a bit old now, but
we've got one of those as well. Do worry about it. Anyway, mind how you go. Why is a tabby cat, which clearly has lots of different coloured fur, when you brush it, all the hair that comes off is grey? I just thought of a possible answer to that, actually, but we shall see. James is in Inverness. James, question or answer?
It's a question, James.
Carry on.
So it's a musical question this morning, and it's about vibrato.
Yeah.
So in the voice, in the human voice, particularly in singers or in opera singers, there is a vibrato on the voice, and in certain instruments, stringed instruments, particularly, there is vibrato. Now, the musical note doesn't create that noise naturally; it's a straight note if you play the note or you sing the note. So why do we have vibrato on a musical instrument? Where did that come from? What was the purpose of it? Is it just acoustically sound, or but that was it?
But why wouldn't we have it?
Well, it's not a natural sound. If you pull the bow across a cello, for example, it makes a straight note.
Yeah.
So you have to manufacture the sound.
Yeah, but surely just someone discovered it and decided that sounds nice, and then played it to his mates, and they all agreed, and now it's become part of the musical lexicon, as it were.
But not all instruments have it, so you can't do it in all instruments.
Well, then you don't. I don't quite get the question. I'm probably being a bit dense, James.
No, it's what's the purpose of vibrato? What's the reason for it? Is it just a nice sound, or where did it come from, or what was it part of a musical discovery or whatever? But it's just, if you look at opera singers, for example, they have a particularly strong vibrato. Other pop singers don't, for example. So
they might do. They're just not really required. Some do. Tracy Chapman.
Yeah.
No, and also, do you remember Jim Diamond? I could have known better. And to lie to one as beautiful as you. It's from your neck of the woods, isn't he?
Yeah, so what's the purpose of it?
It sounds nice. I just think it sounds nice.
Do you think so? Do you think that's it?
Well, I put it on the board, but I want to manage your expectations, James.
All right.
Because I don't know that it might just be one of those things that just is. Do you know what I mean?
There'll be some musical geniuses out there.
There might be. So exactly, what is the point of it? Is that what you're asking?
What is the point of it? Yeah.
What is the point of the vibrato? The vibrato. Okay. All right. You're on. Yeah. I like it. Well, I like it, but I'm just managing your expectations. It's 12:15.
James O'Brien on LBC. James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 19 minutes after 12 and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where Mystery Hour is underway. Why are bin liners sold with volume? Jeff's in for a bit of a shock, isn't he? I mean, rucksacks. I was thinking, some of you have pointed out that it was Nicholas who said I've often wondered that about rucksacks, and also garden centres. You buy compost and things like that in litres, don't you? So I think we know the answer, but I'm not sure Jeff's going to accept it. Why do trains have stations, but aeroplanes have ports, and aeroplanes and boats have ports? Why does Martin's cat only shed grey hairs? Or at least, why does it appear that all the hairs are grey, despite the fact that the cat is a tabby? And what's the point of a vibrato? I can't do that without sort of tapping my throat like that. I can't do it normally. No, I can't. I have to. So that just looks ridiculous. I could never be an opera singer because I'd have to sort of fiddle with my throat like that. So anyway, what's it all about? Vibrato. Ian's in Warwick. Ian, question or answer?
Answer.
Carry on.
Airports.
Yes.
The airports are basically airfields that have full-time customs facilities that maybe migrated from the early years of seaports, where customs officers were at hand all the time, basically. And when airports came to be, or airfields came to have customs facilities, the customs officers would have migrated from the ones who were originally at seaports to airports.
So ports have customs facilities, traditionally?
Yes.
And that is why they're called ports?
Correct.
And stations generally don't, even though they might do now?
Yes, that's perfectly true, yeah.
I like it. So is it anything... So past ports, that's where the chicken and egg element comes into it. What came first, the port or the passport?
Good question.
It is, isn't it?
Brilliant.
But I think you've answered Matthew's question in that it was to do with international travel effectively, but specifically the need for customs to check that there was no smuggling going on or inappropriate ingress into countries.
Yeah. You can also have aerodromes that have customs facilities on a temporary basis.
Aerodromes, of course.
Yes, where they're called in. You can identify those. You'll find it, all their air traffic control towers.
Yes. If it's a place where people keep their planes and have little... go for jollies and then fly back again. That's an aerodrome.
No, that might be an airfield.
Or an airfield, but not an airport.
No.
Because it doesn't have customs. Well, what a great answer. Yeah. Qualifications? What are your qualifications, Ian?
Ex-private pilot's licence and ex-Air Force.
Well, there you go. That's fantastic. That's two ex-Air Force today. We had you and we had the bloke from Jane's as well. Round of applause for Ian.
Waiting for the book as well.
Say again?
I'm keen to see your book when it arrives.
Oh, well, that's very kind of you, Ian. It's phone line. I just got through the dodgy phone line on that. November the 2nd is the date for the new book, it's a week today. It's a week today. Oh, my days. How exciting. Thank you, Ian, for reminding me. God, you think I've been plugging it mercilessly previously. You wait until what's going to start now. 2 weeks today. 2 weeks today. 2 weeks today. Do you know why I thought it was a week today? Because I'm on holiday next week. I'm off next week. I've just somehow in my mind I've removed that week from professional existence. That's ridiculous. Jay's in Croydon. Jay, question or answer?
Answer.
Carry on. Go on.
Okay, so to the bins, litres question.
Yes.
The reason why is because litres, as far as I'm aware, is an SI unit.
Right.
So 1 litre at atmospheric sea level will occupy the same volume no matter where it is.
Yeah.
You can't compress water. Simply, that's why hydraulics work.
I think you're right, and I think your answer is relevant. But I think that Jeff is... I think he's sort of in a slightly different universe from you and me, Jay. Because it's not... Because you and me, we're sort of explaining to him what litres are.
Yeah.
And why it's a helpful unit of measurement.
Yeah.
That's not confined to water.
No, that's it. But
he wants to know, why are bins measured it? Why bins, though?
They just are.
Well, that's what I thought as well.
It's just because, most things are measured in when you're talking about volume, you tend to use litres. Because litres it's an SI unit. It's not... You can't change what 1 litre is in terms of volume. It just is what it is.
And the shape doesn't matter either. So you might have an octagonal bin.
Exactly.
Or you might have a very long and narrow bin, but the amount that it will hold is what you need to know, not how tall it is or how fat it is or anything like that.
That's it. That's exactly it. So if you've got 1 metre by 1 metre by 1 metre of water, you've got 1 tonne of water.
Yeah.
Exactly 1 tonne. Whereas if you had a tonne of bricks is going to be a lot less volume than a tonne of feathers.
So, guys, volume, yes, a lot less volume than a tonne of feathers. So there, it's actually, the more you think about it, the more bloody obvious it becomes, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But I've got a feeling Jeff's not going to be happy. I just think he's somewhere, Jeff is thinking to himself, but why a bin? And the answer is because there's no other blooming way of doing it. That's why I said the thing about tennis balls.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah.
What about cubic centimetres? Why don't we do it with cubic centimetres, for example? You could do, couldn't you?
You could, but then if you were to say a bin is sort of like, 30 centimetres by 60 centimetres by 100 centimetres, there's a bit of a mental jump for a lot of people.
It's just 20 litres.
You know what 20 litres is. It's half of 40.
Qualifications?
For example, I used to be a bin man, and now I'm an engineer.
That's one of my favourite qualifications of all time.
Yep, I worked in the bin for 2 years.
I love that. Massive round of applause for Jay, please. That's beautifully done.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you very much. I'm not sure that is actually a qualification for knowing why bins are measured in litres, but in another way, it's the most perfect qualification of all, isn't it?
Yeah, now I'm an engineer. I fix washing machines.
But that's what I thought you were going to say. I thought you were going to say something like that. Oh, I love it. Thank you, mate. God, blimey, we do a guarantee, don't we? I always forget these days. I used to always do a guarantee at 12 o'clock that you'll have at least one laugh out loud moment between 12 and 1. That one made me laugh a lot. What? My rib is better. Thank you for asking. It's still not right. It is a bit... But that first week, that was murder. Absolute murder. I had painkillers all that week, and then by last Thursday, it was all right. It was okay. And now it's just when I wake up in the mornings. I realise that's why they called that programme Only When I Laugh. Do you remember that? Are you too young for that, probably? There used to be a wonderful comedy programme called Only When I've got quite a good showbiz anecdote here that I could share with you, if you're in the mood. So... Only When I Laugh was set in a hospital. I think James Boland was in it. And I think the theme tune was, I'm H-A-P-P-Y, I'm H-A-P-P-Y. I may have got that bit wrong, the theme tune, but don't sue me. So I interviewed Dudley Sutton once, who played Tinker in Lovejoy, but he was an absolute legend of British stage and screen. And he was also a fairly heavy drinker. back in the day and part of that wonderful sort of Soho bohemian crowd. And he told me a story that just tickled me so much, is that he was between jobs at one point and phoned his agent. He saw this thing come on the telly called Only When I Laugh, this hospital set drama. And he phoned his agent to complain that he hadn't been in it and say, why can't you get me a role in that? And his agent pointed out he had actually been in it, but he'd been so drunk that he'd completely forgotten. And you would never have known it from his performance at all. But it was just one of those old school Soho storytellers that I'm not sure we'll ever see again. 27 after 12 is the time. Elaine is in Richmond upon Thames. Elaine, question or answer?
I've got an answer for you, James.
Carry on.
It's about vibrato.
Oh, yes.
It's about vibrato because I am a singer, jazz singer, was a West End performer, and I run a singing organisation, and it's a question that's asked a lot.
Is it? So I was wrong to tease James about the ridiculousness of his question then, really?
I have people in my courses all the time saying, why is my voice not like hers? Why does she have that lovely wave in her voice and I don't have it?
Yes.
There is a way of teaching it.
Is there?
Would you like me to demonstrate a non-vibrato, a little bit of something, and then a vibrato to show you the difference?
I would love you to. It would be rude not to, I think, now.
No. I think you don't have to. I was just going to give you an example.
No, I want you to. I want you to. Show me the difference.
Sure?
Yes, absolutely. You're not going to break glass or anything like that, are you?
Oh, God, no. So, Fly Me to the Moon. Fly me to the moon. You know that song?
And let me play amongst the stars. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll sing it without vibrato. Okay?
Yeah.
Fly me to the moon and let me play amongst the stars. Okay,
You've got a beautiful voice.
I haven't. Not like that. I don't think I have.
Oh, just in terms of being tuneful.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So that was to demonstrate it was in tune and it was the melody of the song, but it has no wave in the voice.
Yes.
The wave in the voice is something both in instruments and in the voice that seduces people and they like it more. And it's a waving sound and it goes through your body and you can develop it. Some people don't have it and can develop it. Some people have amazing vibratos. So I'll sing a little bit with a vibrato,
Please.
the way I would sing it more.
Yeah.
Okay. Fly me to the moon and let me play among the stars.
Let me see what spring is like on a Jupiter and Mars.
Would you like to come to one of my lessons?
I think I'm beyond. I think I'm beyond your reach. I think I'm beyond.
No, you're not. You were pretending not to sing in tune.
I really wasn't. Well, let me see what spring is like on a Jupiter and Mars. I did a bit of vibrato for you at the end there.
You know the other funny thing, James, I must add that certain nationalities have a vibrato that's much faster, like Nana Muscuri. Oh,
yes.
Now, that's the question I get asked more than anything. For example, La Vie en Rose. Hold me closer and hold me fast. Well, when you heard that thing by Piaf
You're right.
or French singers, that's something that they grow up hearing and they develop it as a style.
Well, I never.
And it doesn't exist in most voices in this country.
But in other countries it does.
Ethnicities, it does. And it's sort of cultural and learned.
And so the answer is that it is easy on the ear. The answer is that it's nicer to listen to.
People generally think so, but there are exceptions. For example, Sting has no vibrato. Yeah. Message in a bottle. He has no vibrato, but people love his voice.
I love his voice.
I love his voice. So I would say you can grow it. It's oscillating your vocal folds, and I can make it bigger and smaller.
Pardon?
And it's a wave of your vocal folds.
Yes.
But you generally grow up with some vibrato.
And that's the voice question answered. But the instrument question is just the same. It's just been discovered that manipulation of the strings or something in most audience members or most listeners, or with most pieces of music, it creates simply a more pleasurable listening experience.
Yes, and it evokes the flow and the wave in it evokes something primeval in you,
really
I believe.
Does. Yeah, I wonder why that is.
And my bass player in my jazz trio plays with a bow. and he plays both a traditional big bass, but he plays with a bow, and he waves his finger across to make it absolutely wavy, and people just go ooh in the audience.
It's emotion, isn't it?
Yeah, it gives people shivers. Yeah.
Oh, that's glorious. Have you got any gigs coming up that you'd like to mention?
Oh yeah, please.
Carry on.
Okay, the Boar's Head Jazz Club in Barnes, which is one of the oldest jazz clubs in Britain.
I know it well. It's next to the Chippy.
Yeah, next to the Chippy. We're called Jazzish, and we're there on the 28th. We're a jazz trio, piano, bass and vocals, and we sing all styles and genres, and we bring them towards a jazzish feel. It's the 28th, coming up not this Saturday, the Saturday after at 8 o'clock. Come and see us.
There you go.
Thank you for that.
No, thank you, and I can offer you a round of applause as well.
Oh, how lovely.
No, you're very welcome. That was amazing.
James O'Brien on LBC. James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 12:36 and you are listening to LBC with James O'Binliners, where Mystery Hour is underway. We've done the volume question, we've done the voice question, with just the cat fur question, we've done the port question. Why does Martin's cat shed, when he brushes a tabby cat, a multicoloured cat, all the fur that comes off the cat is grey? It means we've got room for more questions. You've mixed it up a bit today, haven't you? You're putting the answers on earlier. Trying to sort of, I like it. David's in Leamington Spa. David, question or answer?
Oh, hello, James. It's a question.
Carry on.
It's to do with eyes.
Yes.
Why, as humans, are the whites of our eyes visible, or always visible?
Didn't this come up quite... Well, you obviously didn't hear it because you wouldn't have... Didn't we do this quite recently?
Did we? I know
you don't.
That long, so you could be right.
I know. I thought, did we not do the whites of their eyes like in the last 6 weeks or something? Is it only humans, only mammals, only humans have whites of their eyes on show? No, everyone's looking at me blankly. I think I may have just had one of those weird déjà vu moments, David. That never happened. So, yes, how many animals have you checked?
Well, I can't remember seeing an animal where the whites of the eyes are visible. I mean, I look at my dog, for instance.
Yes.
If it's looking straight at me, the whites aren't visible. Obviously, if you look at an angle, then yes, they are, but... It just seems that all races of humans you can see the whites of the eyes, but I can't think of an animal where in a sort of resting position you'd see them.
No, so why have we evolved in that way? Or
what's the benefit of that?
I've got the strangest sense of familiarity, but we will find out. I will find out for you. Why is it only us? Thank you, David. We've a bizarre sense there. It's a good question, though. Why is it only us that have whites, visible eye whites? 12:38 is the time. Dave's in Retford. Dave, question or answer?
Question, please.
Carry on, Dave.
I wanted to know if identical twins can be different-handed.
Oh. Yeah, so do I now. That's it. I do. Why do you want to know?
What I want to know is you may or may not remember Captain Caveman.
That's vibrato.
Is it?
Captain! That's vibrato. That was a really good example of a vibrato in a voice, though. I could have done Captain Caveman instead of humiliating myself by singing. I do remember Captain Caveman, of course. I've just demonstrated.
There was an episode in Captain Caveman where they figure out who the villain is by the fact that one of the twins is left-handed and one is right-handed.
Is that right? And you want to know whether that is genetically sound?
Yes, or feasible, yeah.
Yeah, well, you're on. I shall find. I love that. I very rarely ask people why they want to know the answer to the question that they've asked, but so I must have been a bit of inspiration there, Dave. And I asked you, and Captain Cave was a perfect reason for wanting to ask a question, to find out whether or not a plot line in Captain Caveman 30 years ago was scientifically accurate.
Yeah, it's just that the kids have been watching it. I've had them on DVD, so the kids have been watching it. That's why I've seen it recently.
Oh, lovely.
I don't remember it from 30 years ago.
Do they like it?
They do, actually. Yeah, they do like it.
Is it Hanna-Barbera?
It is. I think it is, isn't it?
I think it is. 12:40 is the time I met Joseph Barbera. I'm doing all my showbiz anecdotes today. It's all gone a bit variety club, hasn't it? I'll stop now. Helen is in Bromley. Helen, question or answer?
Answer, James.
Carry on.
Sorry to be rubbish. It's about bins.
Well, I thought we dealt with that satisfactorily. I thought Jay provided a very good answer.
He gave an answer of what volume is, but as you said, I don't think really answered the confusion of your caller.
Why is a bin measured in litres? Why is a bin liner? Go on then.
A bin is measured in many ways, but what we're measuring with litres is its capacity, how
Yes.
much it holds. But
Yes.
I also need to know, its physical size. I need to know its height, its width, its depth to know how it fits in my kitchen.
Yes, but
Because
not the bin liner. The bin liner, because it's so malleable, is, unless you've got a mad bin that's shaped like like a scaffolding pole, and you have to cut up all your rubbish into tiny little bits. But unless you've got a mad bin, then a bin liner of 20 litres is going to fit in any 20-litre bin.
Yeah, but that 20-litre bin might be twice the size because it might be thicker, it might have a pedestal on it.
No, but the bit that the bin liner goes in is just volume, isn't it?
There's nothing else you can measure it in. I could scrunch
Exactly.
my bin liner up to the size of my hand.
Yes.
That size doesn't help anyone, does it?
No, but that's not going to go in a bin when it's the size of your hand.
Exactly. The only thing you can measure is, so you're measuring its capacity,
Volume.
which is different from its size.
Yes, volume.
Yeah, but its size is a volume as well.
Well, volume or capacity. It's volume.
Volume is how we measure it. The capacity is how much it holds.
Oh, yeah, okay. I think I understood all this. What do you think was missing from the original answer?
I don't think it...
Because it was tennis. It's tennis balls. It's tennis balls. So Jeff didn't understand when I said you might as well use tennis balls. It's the only way you can measure capacity or volume.
I think the difference, though, is I think he's thinking about the size of the bin as
Yes. That's
how
where he's
big it
getting
is in my
confused.
kitchen.
Yes, but that's where he's getting confused because the
Exactly.
only reason they tell you the bin in litres is because of the capacity.
Well, he also brought up pans, and I
You
think
can
it's
see it. Yeah, we don't need to bring pans into it, do we? It was a ridiculous thing to do. As if you buy a pan according to. I mean, you do see, and on a pan, you do see the capacity that it holds, but it's
Exactly.
width. But it's width.
There is a difference between a 10-inch pan that holds 2 litres and a 10-inch pan that holds 4 litres. I need both measurements as a
Yes,
consumer.
but we're not with a bin liner. Not when you're buying a bin liner, you don't.
But he started with bins.
Yes, I know he did, and the bin, I suppose, allows the pan point to be brought into the conversation. But it's the central question, as you point out. A round of applause for Helen, of capacity. I think we can all spare a thought for Anthony here, who says, my 60-litre bin is too wide for all of the 60-litre liners, and it drives me mad. I have to use black sacks, says Anthony, and we feel his bin pain. Nick's in Purley. Nick, question or answer?
It's a question.
Yeah.
Now, I listen every Thursday, and I'm worried your listeners might think I'm a bit sick, because I think people might know this and think, what? Anyway, basically...
I guarantee you'll be okay.
Right, basically, on my jet washer, when I want to jet wash the patio...
I already love this question.
Which
Nick.
is coming from my hose, which
I
comes out
already love this question. On my
the hose
jet
comes
washer.
out terribly slowly.
It does, a dribble, really.
But the jet washer comes out forever
I
at
know.
incredibly high pressure.
It's a bloody mystery is what it is.
And if it was pulling from something that hadn't got much water, surely eventually it goes a faster pace that would just run out of water.
Exactly.
And even if it's sucking from the hose would eventually run out of water because it's taken from the mains at the top of the hill.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, congratulations to Dorking begrudgingly. They get a kid dementia at Dorking 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, it was only a cup game, wasn't it? But thank you.
Oh, no, it was the league. I was thinking of you.
The Dorking game?
Yeah.
Oh, no, of course it was. It was a cup game last
Yeah.
season. It's the one that I went to. No, thank you, Nick. Yeah, it was. We turned.
Well, I didn't enjoy it.
Touchwood,
But anyway.
we've turned a corner. Touchwood, so just playing fine all season. We just couldn't score goals.
And I've also just finished How to Be Right When You're Wrong, and that's the second best book I've read this year.
What's
second
the-
only to Rory Stewart is the best.
Well, I'm told that Rory and Alistair Campbell have just plugged my new book on their podcast, so I will allow you to put me into silver place position on this
Well,
occasion.
you did the podcast with Rory about 2 years ago.
That's
You
right,
should
I
probably
did.
have him on again. Yeah, you should have him on again now because his life changed. since then.
Well, he was
Anyway,
on the show. You only listen on Thursdays, don't you? So he was on the show about a month ago.
I listen when I can.
All right.
But I can't always listen.
So-
Anyway, the bottom line is...
Why can
I
it
don't
come out of that?
understand-
Why does the water pressure do such business when the
And
tap
hasn't it done
is
it
rubbish?
indefinitely?
When the
Because
tap is
surely it would just-
well, I
Yes.
think I know this.
Well, that's why, you see, because I thought everybody would know it.
No,
except me, and I
no.
think I was
It's. I've
inferior.
only. Because I have thought about this. Also, do you know? I never remember questions that I want to ask myself on Mystery Hour. But how? What? Because water pressure in the house we live in now is fantastic. And in the last house, it was not fantastic. And I don't know why. I don't know what the difference is. But that's not the point. Here's what I think happens. There's a reservoir in your I don't think this is going to work. There's a reservoir in your water pressure, in your water jet washer.
Yeah, but that's great. But
it fills up, and the pressure goes backwards into the tap.
Are you saying it pulls from the water?
That's where it all falls apart, Nick.
Because
it makes no sense. Do you know what I think it is?
No.
Magic.
That's not a legitimate answer, because my brother played your game last Christmas and they all had a row because they didn't accept the answer.
Fantastic.
Well, some of them didn't, some of them didn't.
Well, I'll tell you what, give me a ring if you want me to adjudicate next Christmas. I'll give you my private mobile number. I'll give you my mobile number. I don't want any family breakdowns over the Mystery Hour board game.
No, we just sulked. Fine.
Not this Christmas. I will find out for you. Just to make sure everyone understands the question, if they haven't got a jet washer, you turn on your tap, and the water is coming out at a very unimpressive rate. The pressure is not great. It wouldn't knock the skin off a rice pudding. And then you plug in the hose to the tap and the other end of the hose to the jet washer, and you turn it on, so there's electricity there as well. That's probably relevant, isn't it? I'm
sure it gives it power, but you've still got to take the water.
But how?
From somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. So, but then you turn it on and you pull the trigger, and it comes out like nobody's business. It wouldn't just knock the skin off a rice pudding. It would knock the whole bowl about 4 gardens down.
Well, it can injure your legs, especially when you forget it's a jet
washer.
Be
very careful. You can't mess about with jet washers, Nick.
No. I've gone down to the bone once.
You've got the scars to show it. You went down to the bone?
Yeah.
Blimey.
Well, I was just cleaning because my leg was dirty, and so I cleaned it, and I forgot thinking it's just a hose, and it wasn't very nice. I won't talk about it.
No, I don't want to talk about it anymore either. I just crossed my legs for some reason. I'll find out for you, Nick. Great question.
James O'Brien on LBC. James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 12:51 and you are listening to James O'Binliners on LBC. Thank you to whoever sent that joke in. And thank you to Anthony as well, who said, what a brilliant show. You've really cheered me up. Thank you. Cheered myself up today, actually, and the callers have cheered me up. It's all reciprocal. It's going to be hard to decide who gets the game. And it's not over yet. Lou's in Stoke. Lou, question or answer?
Answer, James.
Carry on.
Identical twins.
Yes,
they can be different-handed.
Captain Caveman. Sorry.
Beautiful that was.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, so identical twins can have different hands. They can also have different fingerprints, and they can also have different palm or foot marking.
Is there mirror twins are a thing, are they?
You can have mirror twins as well. They're identical, where they tend to have I don't know if they're real. I've never met one. But there's
qualifications.
Twins. Twin mum to identical twin girls.
With different hands?
No, both left.
But you've looked into it?
Yeah.
Cool.
I'm sad like that.
No, it's not sad at all. Must be interesting to have twin daughters, twin children. It's a sort of it's enduringly fascinating to the rest of the population, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting when they hit teenagehood.
Yes. So they get on brilliantly at the moment, do they?
No, they argue terrible.
Oh, but that's parenting. That's parenting. That is, I think, in my experience.
Heaven forbid somebody should pick on one of them though, because they're best friends then.
Oh, I like that. Oh, that's what you want. Round of applause for Lou.
Yep. Thank you.
Beautifully done. Thank you, Lou. Abby's in Tunbridge. Abby, question or answer?
Answer.
Carry on.
So basically, the bloke that was brushing his cat, and it was a multicoloured cat, but he was only getting grey hair out.
Yeah.
That's because he was brushing the undercoat out, which is grey. So when you cats, he wouldn't be brushing the multicoloured hair out. What he's brushing out is his cat's undercoat, which is, if he looks underneath the hair, there's going to be a really short coat, which is the undercoat that keeps their coat them warmer. And it sheds certain times of year.
So that's what you molt. That's what you lose according to the seasons. But the actual fur, the coloured, the tabby bit, that just stays forever, does it?
Yeah, that does.
Well, I wish I could find that for humans. Abby, I'd have had a very different experience. Qualifications?
Dog groomer.
Nice. What about cats?
Yes, don't really like them that much.
I mean, there's not much business in cat grooming, is there?
No, there isn't.
Because they don't need it. It's mad, isn't it? That if you didn't have didn't have dog groomers, the fur, would it grow forever?
Well, now everybody's got their cockapoos and mixed breeds and stuff, then yeah, you do.
That's what we've got. And I always think of those sheep that get found in Australia after they've run off from the flock and they've been gone for 10 years and they're about the size of a small car because all the fur's never stopped growing. Do you, forgive me for my inappropriate curiosity, but why is it so expensive?
Because it takes so long. So if you think about it, when you go to the hairdresser...
Yeah.
When you go to the hairdresser, they'll charge you like £60 or something.
Yeah.
But we're doing nails, we're doing bath, like massage, haircut. It just takes so much longer.
That's a very good point. Do you do humans? That sounds better than my hairdressers.
Only in lockdown.
Round of applause for Abby. Lovely stuff. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And also, it's a bit annoying, it's a bit rude to say, why does it cost so much? Because you're a professional and highly trained and doing very tricky work. Sorry. Richard's in Aylesbury. Richard, question or answer?
I've got an answer, James.
Carry on.
It's for the pressure washing question.
Yeah.
So with regards to pressure washing, the hose that supplies the water will supply the water at a very low rate. Usually like one bar, which is 30 psi, give or take. And then you have a little brass pump usually in the pressure washer, and that pressurizes the water. And what it's trying to do is push the water out of a really tiny hole, which is at the other end of your pressure washer.
So the bit we missed, it's all about the constriction, isn't it?
Yes.
At the other end of the pipe. So you would, if the aperture on the hose was the same width as the aperture on the tap, you wouldn't have much pressure at all.
It'd be the same, pretty much, give or take.
Yeah. So that, I mean, it was actually a very silly question after all.
No, there's no such thing as silly question on Mystery Hour.
There he is. You see, he's written as a slogan. Thank you. What are your qualifications, Richard?
I'm a firefighter, so we're dealing with pumps all day long.
Of course you are. And like the big version, but the principle is still the same. You'd never get a hose to reach the third floor of a building unless it was a narrower. So you've got the pump. And then all right, that'll do. Round of applause for Richard. Great job, man. Thank you. That's not your first, is it?
That's my second, I think.
I thought so. I recognise your accent. Thank you, Richard. 12:56 is the time. Juliet's in Marlow. Juliet, question or answer?
It's an answer, James. It's just to add to the answer about vibrato.
Oh, yes.
Yes, so, I'm not going to discredit what the other lovely lady said with her beautiful voice.
Elaine from Jazzish.
Yes.
Was it Jazzish? Yes, Elaine.
Yes, I'm not going to discredit what she said because it was mostly true. But
of course.
Essentially, yes, you can sort of mimic it and learn to create a vibrato in your voice. But in order to have a true vibrato, if you think of a rich vibrato that an opera singer has, it's really rich and big and great. It's all to do with skill, and it actually comes from the support you have in your diaphragm. So to sing properly, you have to have your support, your breath work comes from your diaphragm. And if that's fully engaged and you're trained and you're singing with great technique, it allows the vocal box and your vocal folds to relax so that you can actually create that beautiful sound. And with that comes the oscillation of the vocal fold. And it also means you can sing stronger without actually tiring your voice. So it's actually a sign of skill and talent more than for the sort of pleasing of the ear.
But it's both, though, because it wouldn't be a skill or a talent unless it was appreciated by the people listening, would it?
True.
So we're back to chickens and eggs again.
Well, but
we are, because it doesn't matter how hard it is to do. If it sounded awful, it wouldn't be worth doing.
True, but I think some people do put it on with their voice. They almost force their voice.
They do.
They want to create it, and it doesn't actually always sound nice.
No.
If you think about sometimes a little old lady in the front pew at church who's shrilly at the front, and yet you have a beautiful chorister, a young choir boy who's singing Walking in the Air with a pure voice.
Yeah, very true.
That that can be more pleasant than the shrill old
lady. I like
in the
it.
front
Oh,
pew.
well done. Qualifications?
Well, I'm a trained classical singer, and
Fantastic.
so, read music at university.
Well, round of applause for Juliet, please. We haven't got time, sadly, to ask you to prove it. You're a trained classical singer, because I want to squeeze in Adam in Bow. Adam, question or answer?
It's an answer, James. It's a contribution to an answer, actually, because someone's answered it already, but I just thought I would contribute to the twin question. I'm a mirror image twin, so, I'm left-handed, my brother's right-handed.
Wow.
I'm left-footed, my brother's right-footed, and we've got asymmetries on the face, which are sign. reproduced when you look at us on both sides.
It's pretty definitive, isn't it? What qualifications? I'm literally the answer to the
I am
question.
One. Also, I played football for Water Beach Colts SC with my left foot. So you might know them. Around that time, I was raised in Land Beach.
Oh, God, yes, of course, down there. Well, I'm out of time. But I give you a round of applause, but you have to share it with your brother. It's only fair. Oh man, it's tough, very, very tough this week. I'm going to give it to Jay. Because I gave Elaine a free advert. Otherwise, it would have been between Jay and Elaine. But just qualifications bin man just got me right in the funny bone. If you missed any of today's show, you can listen back on Catch Up on Global Player, where you can also pause and rewind live radio. You'll also find all of LBC's shows to catch up on, as well as all the best video clips from LBC and other global stations. Pause and rewind live radio on Global Player, where you're always
in control.
You're always in control. Download for free from your app store or head to globalplayer.com. Tom Sawbrick will be with you at 4, but now on LBC, it's time for Sheila Fogarty.
James O'Brien on LBC.